All right, folks, thank you all for coming. We know there's a lot of meeting burnout, and so, but we're filming it, so anyone not here can still gain from your participation.
Dave is here.
Yay! So, thank you. We have passed around sort of just a outline of the areas that Karen and I have identified over the last many months as kind of the areas that we want to write our report in at this point. But of course, we want feedback.
Happy to have suggestions.
We've done tons of meetings in different ways with different people, different groups on a bunch of subjects. So it's still ongoing. That's kind of where we're at right now. So we kind of want to go through what we're thinking, and if you don't mind, and you may have your own stories and other things to talk about, and that's beautiful and perfect, but we kind of want to go through what we have broken down as kind of the chapters of the report, so to speak, and get any feedback that you all have on this.
And I'll say, when I look at this, especially the item second to the bottom, preparation, I think of this list as an oval. So when we have a disaster, the first thing is notification. We all find out about it. And then it goes through all these phases that we've tried to lay out here. And if you have anything you'd like us to add, we'd love to know about that.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, we start talking about mitigation of risk for future incidents. And that's our goal as this committee, as the co-chairs. We want to see the city at every level, businesses, neighborhoods, individual households, our local schools. We want to see everybody better prepared. Because the only thing we know for a fact is that this is not the last incident. We could have the earthquake any day. We could have another fire. We will have another fire. We all know that. And it could be something else that we don't normally have here. So I'd like to ask everybody if you would just take a minute and take a look at this list. And if there's something you think that we have missed, I would like to be able to add that.
And it might come up as we go through this too. I mean, it might reveal, and some of these are overlap. It's just impossible to avoid. You can get into this whole circular gray area in a way.
They're all related.
Yeah, everything's not in its own bucket. Everything didn't happen in order.
And
not at my
things
house.
are still happening, obviously.
So do you want to go through this?
Yeah, we're gonna go, let's just go through it.
We're gonna go through them.
We're kind of winging it. We're like, should we go through the list?
I
Let's go
just
through
have
the
a
list.
couple questions that I just don't know the answers to, which probably fit in here somewhere.
And we may not either. So notification.
I better write
How
them down
were
or
you
I'm gonna
notified?
forget.
How should you be notified? How do you want to be notified? What, Paul's just, I can tell, it's like he's got this on his mind.
We all would love to be notified, but most of the time, it's an emergency. I mean, most of us were aware of the fact that there were fires. There was a fire in Paradise, and then there was smoke over the hill. And I don't know about everybody else, but I was watching the TV the night before there. And, you saw once you saw the fire cross the highway, which is like 11:30 at night, you start calling friends. And that's, and then after it burned over, I had some friends who were on Barrymore, at the end of Barrymore, which is up behind Solstice Canyon. And
Excuse me, Paul, so I still am not aware of some of this stuff. It crossed the freeway at 11:30
the night before.
before.
Yeah.
And then went to like
It
Milk
just-
Lake area or where?
It just started through the hills, and I don't know what it hit
You know,
next.
across the 101, 11:30?
Yeah, at night.
That's,
I think that's too early. I think it
I
was.
thought
it's
it was
really
early
between
too.
5 and 5:30?
Yeah.
In the morning?
Yeah.
Cause I don't remember
Because-
seeing anything that
Maybe I'm
happened.
wrong. Maybe it's been 6 months, so maybe my memory is not so good, but,
I don't know, but I didn't know it was that early.
and I
Yeah,
know that,
I saw it cross around 5:30 on TV.
okay.
So that's what I'm basing it on, and then what all the firemen say, but we're not gonna.
No, they're
believe them
probably right.
necessarily. But,
They're
yeah,
probably right.
Or
that's
maybe
when I
they
looked
said
at
it
my
was
wife
in
and said,
danger
start
of
packing.
crossing, I don't know.
Right?
That's when I looked at my wife and said, start packing.
Yeah.
It was later.
Yeah,
Yeah.
5:30ish, right?
I'm not sure at what time, but I know it was later because
Yeah.
we activated the EOC at about 2 a.m.
What's the
Sorry, Emergency Operations Center, at about 2 a.m.
Can you get our sound without us using mics? Is that gonna work?
It'll be fine.
It'll be
Yeah,
fine? Okay,
keep going.
just checking.
And we came to City Hall then, and we were watching the progress of the fire the night before. And the last time that we meaning the city manager and the public safety manager and the assistant city manager and maybe one other person, I forget, I think Mary, who also works on emergency communications, to make sure everyone was ready to get ready to go, basically, to move into that action, because we were watching the fire and we were getting notices from the fire department. And when we all sort of stopped talking to each other, maybe 11 p.m. or so, it had not jumped the 101, but we were thinking it was that was probably going that way. And then it was like 3 hours later or so that, I don't know if it had jumped the 101 at that time, but it was about 2 a.m. when they said, we're all going to City Hall, we're putting up the EOC, it's coming our way. And
But no notifications went out then yet,
No.
right?
No, they did, we did.
Yeah,
I
there
sent them
was.
out.
I was up.
I pushed the
At
button.
2 a.m.?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, we didn't put out evacuation notices saying evacuate the
That's-
city at
that's
2
what I'm
a.m., but we
talking
sent
about. There was kinda
notices
like
out saying the fire is
pre-evacuation.
progressing towards Malibu.
Yeah, that's what I remember.
I remember they're saying, be prepared for,
Potential evacuation.
yeah.
So did.
But
let me ask
I
you-
interrupted Paul.
No, no, it's okay.
Go ahead.
Basically, you call other people in town that you know, and some friends of mine are up behind Solstice, and so the next day we're talking on the phone, I'm going, are you leaving? And they're going, the smoke is still going north of us and it's headed to the west, and I don't think it's gonna come down here.
And this was in Solstice or Corral or where?
Up behind Solstice, if you go up through Corral and then
Right.
go over behind Solstice Canyon, there's a little street called Barrymore. It only has like 6 houses on it.
And you access it through Corral?
You access it through Corral, and it's, my buddy's house is the next to the last house on that road. And I was a partner in it many years ago, and then I saved that house in '82 because I was there and he had fire hoses. And and then he lost it in '07, but he's rebuilt. And so, you know, and he said, it's going north of me, it's going north of me. And I was sitting in Sarah Retreat going, well, it's certainly not coming this direction.
And you live in Sarah Retreat?
Yes.
Let me ask a question. Is there anyone here that did not understand the severity of the fire till way too late? Okay, perfect. So what do you think would help to feel like you were notified of of a potential fire coming better than you were?
You know those really aggravating Amber Alerts that wake you up and annoy the shit
Yes.
out of you for
Yes.
kids in places you've never even heard of?
So that is actually gonna happen now. The city had that system, but had never been trained on it. It was supposed to literally be trained that same week.
Matt,
Same
do you
week,
remember what
right?
it's called?
WIA,
We,
Wireless
WIA, that's
Emergency
right.
Alerts.
Wireless
Yeah.
emergency alerts.
The county has had access to it, and we now have access to it. But we didn't yet at the time of the fire. We were
I
busy
wonder if
getting
the
it.
cell phones and the landlines are out, what happens then?
They turn
Well,
on KNX
that-
radio with a
Yeah, but-
battery operated radio.
No, that's what I did in my car.
KNX did not
But I
have
didn't
that
know it was that
coverage.
bad.
I'll listen to KNX.
But how do you wanna be notified?
I think the sirens are a
So,
great idea.
so there's something that, he mentioned something, which is the grapevine, but so it's almost like if you're a resident, everyone that's a resident of Malibu should be sent, they have a choice of course, but they should be sent a letter saying, here, we had a fire, we wanna put you on an alert system, and we want someone else to be put on an alert system. So I live with 10 homes, there's 10 homes in my
So that
area.
someone could notify you.
And 4 of them are regularly unoccupied.
That's great feedback.
So that the home at the top of the hill, where he's never there, so somebody else would be notified, because he always has someone coming to check the house. So there would be it would be twofold. But the WIA, the Amber Alert is wonderful, because I had no idea. I mean, I just you know, I just didn't know.
I think also the fact that this happens, you know, quite frequently here, that, especially in a place like I do, that you just don't, and certainly where you live, that you just don't ever think that's gonna come to you, and it hasn't come to us in 50 years. And so, you know, you go, oh, well, this is another one, and it's not, but the fact that they knew, from what I have said, the fire department, everything, that this was a huge deal. And so if that could have been communicated, it wasn't just like, okay, fire's coming, evacuate, like everyone goes, oh yeah, whatever, okay. And, the new people all left, but, you know, we wouldn't have left
Us
anyway, but
wizened
anyway,
old
yeah.
locals.
But the fire department, I mean, that was the other thing. The fire department, well, would they ever be honest and say, we don't have enough manpower to fight this. We want everyone to know we are doing the best we can. We do not have enough people to fight
Just to
this.
say, this is a massive one.
Wow, that's
We have
powerful
to
language
let
right
you
there.
go.
That's
You
actually,
don't.
that's
very
amazing
everything.
communication right there.
That's a very good point,
It's a great
because,
point.
I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but.
Carla.
Carla makes the point that we've all been through so many fires. So when I looked out of my windows and saw, you know, big clouds above me, I was like, oh, okay, well, shit, this isn't good. But, you know, I've seen this so many times. So I'm kind of saying, I'm gonna watch, I'm gonna keep an eye out, I'm gonna be careful, but I'm not gonna panic, and I'm not about to start packing up. Had I had any idea it
The
was
severity.
coming towards us, and there wasn't gonna be enough of a fire response at all, and we were gonna be left largely defenseless, I probably would have taken it a bit more seriously and not cleaned my kitchen and packed my dishwasher, which is how I spent my last morning at home, because I thought if I had to leave, I was only going for a couple of days. Every other fire that I've been through here in the 25 years I've lived here, it has been emergency central. There have been sirens, screaming, fire engines racing everywhere, a real sense of urgency. There was no sense of that. My neighborhood just went very quiet.
That's
There was
fantastic. of you.
nobody else around, so you didn't really appreciate the danger that was coming. And I was looking out at the mountains and seeing it going to the west of me, so Malibu Park and Malibu West were in trouble, but I was in Point
Yeah,
Dude,
they
and
were.
my air quality was wonderful, and I was absolutely fine until 3 o'clock.
And
then you'll
just a
change
little
the-
fire tracking, if it goes to the west or north of you, it's generally gonna turn when it hits the coast, but not always, but.
Every
th-
afternoon, the wind changes.
Yeah, once it gets, the ocean breezes
Right.
tend to go, you know.
But remember, Point Dude.
I knew when it turned north of me at Malibu West, I'm like, that's when I told my wife to evacuate, I go, oh yeah, it's gonna turn around and go, oh, we didn't forget you. That's really good input. Wanted to add something to that there.
Just the severity, if they could have told us.
The
and they
severity
knew
is,
it.
that's great feedback, that's great feedback. I think the communication in that whole thing, we all know, can be dramatically improved on multiple levels, and of
Like,
course.
take everything of value, they could just say that, cause
Yeah.
this is a bad one. You know, whatever, that, you know, people are like, oh, okay.
And the sirens, I agree with too. I think and I know the city's already working on sirens.
But I think that was one of the
There
things
are
we
people
thought.
I know, including clients of mine, that barely escaped with their life. Their cell phones weren't on, they turned them off. They just didn't, somebody had to go knock on their door and they still didn't believe it. And by the time they left, it was literally running for their lives, and they were up a canyon. So, that's
Even if
really
they
good. I
weren't
love the
on
messaging
Harvester?
that you guys are talking about.
I
Yeah, Keegan.
think was really, really important for, and I made this suggestion to Lake County Fire too, because they're the one that they have the most amount of ability with the information, is that the information needs to be more detailed, because what happens is Malibu has 3 or 4 historic fire corridors, right? All the canyons essentially, right, or 5, whatever it is. So, and historically, it's been, Malibu is under mandatory evacuation. If you're on the east side of Malibu, it may completely not pertain to you if you're on the west side of Malibu, et cetera. So the information that comes from the city, comes from LA County Fire, whatever it is, needs to be more detailed, so people have an understanding of, okay, when do I need to leave? If I'm staying to stay to defend, when do I expect it to come? I listen to the radio, Blue 8 or whatever, for 36 hours, and they gave updates every few hours going, it's gonna hit the 101 in 45 minutes. It's gonna hit Canaan and Mulholland in an hour and a half, and they would update that, it's already hit Canaan and Mulholland.
Who do you going so fast?
It's the fire radio, it's like it's a fire scanner,
I
yeah.
think he raises a good point about when the entire city of Malibu's put
Yeah.
evacuation, it's
Like
so
that
wide, it's so vast. You know,
Yeah.
the Thursday night, the night before, we had friends from Deer Creek, way up there, and then 3 miles up the mountains and down a dirt road, so they live in the middle of nowhere. And they were evacuated on Thursday night, and they spent that night at our house. So, you know, Malibu is so vast, when you tell me there's a fire coming towards Malibu, it gets my attention, but it doesn't tell me Point Doom is in the line of fire, Point Doom is next. If you'd have told me that, and there were no fire crews around, I would have taken it a little more seriously. I think it was a little vague just to say the entire city needs to evacuate.
I think the one point I'd make on that so far, I would
They didn't
caution
know
on
where they
this,
were going.
is they didn't know. They literally
They
were
didn't
so
know which way the
overwhelmed
fire was going.
that they were unable to give that information if they'd had it, from the talks we've had. I just don't, they were, the Hill Fire, they were watching the campfire, they were
Yeah,
just,
but they weren't even in their neighborhood, they weren't in Point Doom, they weren't in their neighborhoods, the fire stations were within, I mean, I
they
could
went to
almost see
greet
the
the
fire.
fire and it blew by them.
No, they were at the fire department, a lot of them.
Yeah, well, the one by Point Doom on PCH, I threw a rock from my house burned down, so it's my other house. So it, you know, it's just, you know, you think that you live close to a fire station, that.
Those were the worst hits sometimes.
Yeah.
William, I live on that street. We lost 2 houses right next to the fire station.
And Mullins Fire Station, the house right next door to the fire station burned down.
Well-
How disreputable is that? The fire station's right there, a big fire station, and they can't see the house next door?
That happened.
They don't have I just don't think they have the, I'm not defending them, I don't think they have the resources.
Mikey, you used the word overwhelmed. If they had just said, the fire is coming, we are outgunned, we are outmanned, and we are overwhelmed, and we do not have control, and we are not going to get control.
They're not gonna
This
say
is
that.
as, I know they're not, but as serious as it
The
gets. I-
sense of that.
You know,
Just say
and I
take
don't think that was
everything you
really
can.
communicated as
Yeah,
well
well,
as
you
it
know,
could have been.
with the Hill Fire, which started 19 minutes before Woolsey.
But the Hill Fire had burned before, that we should have known that this was not gonna be a big.
I don't work for the fire department, you know, but a lot of resources, my understanding is, went there, and that
Ventura
wasn't,
was there.
it turned out that's where they were not needed,
But we
not
all-
like here.
But we all know that the winds blow fires towards the ocean because that's what's happened every single time. So it was kind of a clue that Malibu was gonna be the end of the line.
I can't speak for the fire department, but, you know, those two things happened, we
One
started
thing,
within.
one thing though
20
about the
minutes.
evacuation that I've only heard from other people, cause we never got any notification. But people
But
like.
can I ask you one thing about that right there? Were you or are you now signed up for city alerts?
We were, but our cell phone goes out, we don't get cell service at our house anyway,
Okay.
and, I mean, everything just
Yeah,
went
It's a
out.
huge issue.
And I just don't remember any of it, but then again, I don't remember a lot about that day, but I don't remember any of it. But
It is a
anyway.
blur, isn't it?
And that's the
But I know
question.
that
If you-
people-
If you don't have cell service, then what do you do?
That's why I think the
That's
sirens.
sirens.
So,
Yeah.
my
Yeah,
kids.
yeah.
But
that's right.
one thing in dealing with this though, people I've heard, like that did have service, the Van Oyen who lives, I guess he's out of the city, or
Yeah.
other people said if I'd only known, and they had called the fire station, I think it was Rick's, I don't know for sure. But they said, is there any danger? They said, no problem yet. And this is the night before, and he said, if only someone had said to me, I could have started packing that night. And a lot of people have said that. That wasn't my case at all, but I'm just speaking for those that aren't here. If they had, you know, do it now, you know, earlier, much earlier, better to be safe, and maybe people wouldn't have left then, but at least they were notified.
I think there's another issue that coincides here that gets weird, and that's burnout from over notification. And that's what
Well, that
happened
happened with
in
this.
Santa Barbara, and a lot of people died. They got the notice, and at some point they was like, you know what, we're
This is
fine,
the
we'll just
first
keep an eye
notice.
on it. And so,
But the first notice didn't come
yeah.
till too late. I mean,
So-
we get that with the rains, it was like, oh my God,
And the
another
other
one.
thing that I don't know how you get access to the, is that public access, the station you're talking about?
I mean, kinda, it's on the line.
They should say, listen to, if, that would be another thing to add.
It's
add
not a
into the-
public facing, it's literally the dispatch radio.
Right, but
between
if
strike teams
if
and
there's a link where I as a not knowing person could access that, it'd say access the fire department's site online for current
Up to date.
updates. That would have been, you know, very helpful. So I
Until the power goes out.
Well,
It's
what
not-
about a
it's a
dedicated
handle.
city
no, it's
radio?
online, that's true.
Like, that gets that information, is able to filter it
So,
correctly.
couple things that are gonna change. Number
got
one
that
is,
meeting
Yeah.
actually Reva figured out how to geolocate cell phones in Malibu. So in an emergencies is the way to just ping every cell phone in Malibu. That's brand new. Didn't
Yay.
even know that
You
existed.
get
What is
renters
that?
and you get visitors that way,
Which
which
is
is
important.
super important.
Even through,
That's, isn't that
Wi-Fi.
for WIA?
That's weird.
It could be through WIA, but the geolocation part is an extra fee, which is not that expensive and not apparently that well
Way
known.
worth it.
Very worth it.
When it pings phone, what does that mean?
It connects with
It's
phones by
something.
where they are, not who they are necessarily. So it does grab,
So
Any
if you're on
phone in the
vacation in New
area?
York, you won't get it, but if you're on vacation in Malibu from New York, you will.
Exactly.
That's through WIA, correct?
Exactly.
WIA does do that, but there may be some additional,
The other
there may
interesting.
be some additional service like that, I don't know which one you're talking about, but WIA does that as well.
And what's cool about WIA too, my understanding is that, say you have AT&T and you don't have service, Sprint, I think, was the only place that had service in western Malibu during the fire, is that if you have AT&T, WIA will push you the notification through Sprint, even if you have AT&T, as long as you have roaming turned on, or the ability for roaming turned on or something like that.
Still depends on cell service.
yeah, you have to.
Correct,
Yeah, you
but
have to
like if you have
have
AT&T or
Yeah.
Verizon, it can go through one of those
But
other
until the
providers.
Santa Maria fire, I think it was unprecedented that the cell towers themselves were destroyed as part of the fire. I mean, that really had not happened before. And previous to that, it was not as widely depended upon.
right, going away from cell towers has caused issues that were not foreseen.
Can I ask, is
Yes,
this,
please.
this weird thing that you say that's gonna be new, is it voice or text that they're gonna blast out geographically?
It's both, I believe, right? Okay.
Cause I would say, as a person who's received the phone call version, my brain just goes to mud. But if I can read the text, I'm like, oh, okay, this area is.
And text without links to complete the message. That was something I noticed in this fire. I was
Right.
getting, busy fighting the fire and I look up and I'm like, here's a link. I'm like, I can't connect to a link.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's, I happen to be a point doom, and so I got them out. I'm like, oh, good. Oh, shoot.
Yeah, and also texts go out faster than voice,
Right.
Yes,
Right.
more reliable, less bandwidth.
and you can process it and read it over and over to get it in your head.
So how are we gonna feel, let's just assume we get the siren system. How are we gonna feel? It'll obviously be tested periodically, and is there, I guess we just have to use it right, not to burn people out on it and just ignore it, is that kind of the
Well,
message?
as everybody mentioned this, I grew up in the Midwest, we had a volunteer fire department every day at noon, that
The
was the
noon
test.
whistle.
Yeah, and
Same
then
where I
if it
was
came
the
after,
summertime
the only
kid.
problem here, I just am trying to foresee if I hear this and not, with no explanation, I mean, I've had this already, like I try to contact my neighbors, most of whom would be gone, and they're like, what's happening? Like even when the electricity goes out, like, is your electricity out or what's happening, to not really know what it is. I mean, unless there's like 3 beeps is really bad, like if you have like, a different
That's a good point in the
level.
education on that. So education might be go to the radio you need to have, or AM radio or something like that. That's good though. Assume the power's out, because these will work without power. That's a good thought.
I grew up in the UK, and about 5 miles from my house is Broadmoor Mental Hospital, where they lock up some of the most violent, criminally insane people that the country's ever had.
I heard they're moving to Malibu now.
And every Monday morning at 10 o'clock, they test the siren.
Right.
And, that's the only time they ever test it. And if it goes off at any other time,
You know
somebody has
something's
escaped, and then it's all systems go. But,
Okay.
so that's the way, every Monday morning, 10 o'clock, oh, there it is. And everyone just goes about their business because they're so used to it, but they're also triggered that if it goes off any other time,
You know.
it's not Monday at 10 o'clock, oh, that's a problem. So, you know, I
Yeah, we
think
used to have it
you've
here
got
when I
to
was a
test
kid, it was every Friday.
it. Yeah.
Remember that at school? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, just set a time, this is the time, this is the day. If you hear it at any other time, it is an emergency. If it goes up at this time, it's a routine test, keep on doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I think
Let's
that's.
move
Move on.
on to the evacuation, and I know that no one has any opinions on the evacuation. And you probably know that we are hiring an expert to do the metrics on this and figure it out, because there's only so many cars can fit in so much space, no matter, even if we figure out how to get the traffic flowing. Obviously, they know the issue, and we've spent a long time, Karen and I, talking to the different sheriff agencies or police agencies about the
CHP,
fact that
yeah.
going north was open and no one knew, and just massive miscommunication. CHP was very honest with us, they didn't even know there was a problem at Topanga until like 2 o'clock. So
Well,
there's
can-
all
can-
sorts of issues.
I'm gonna make a friendly correction.
Okay.
It wasn't just that northbound was open and no one knew. I would have gladly gone northbound. I was specifically told it was not open.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of miscommunication.
And that was repeated
No one's
again
hiding
and
from it.
again
And
and
they never
again.
closed
Radio,
it, actually, it was
TV.
dangerous when I took it.
Yeah, then there's that part.
They never actually said,
It's a good point, that's another.
are you freaking crazy? Don't go that way now.
But I know a lot of people that went that way and it was fine. I don't know what time you went that
I guess
way.
to a
Late.
point, yeah.
I went late because I tried to check the elderly neighbors to make sure they could get out.
So, good Samaritan, and you
and then
got punished for it.
I got stuck in the Santa Monica traffic, and then I said, oh, the hell with this shit. And I was like, I'm just gonna hightail it back through there. If it's open, I'm gonna go, because my horses went to Moore Park. So I'm like, driving up there, and when I got to Topanga, the flames were going over the car. And I was like, oh, this is not really, like, really, they could have stopped me, but, okay.
So, on the evacuation, there's a few things, and this is my advice, and I've talked to the fire department a lot. Everyone in their family should identify a safe space that you can go to. Until our houses are built to be safe spaces, which I think is where we have to end up eventually, know where you and your family and friends are gonna go, and assume you can't leave Malibu. And there's a lot of reasons to assume it. If there's a big earthquake, there could be landslides, there's all sort of broken pipes, everything in the world. So, for my family, the official evacuation place is Zuma Beach. For other people, and this comes out of an interesting conversation, I know it's a hot topic for any people, go to Pepperdine. It's actually designed as a safe space. It was built that way on purpose.
Great.
Massive lawns, nothing burnable, that's why they shelter in space. It was actually built that way. So everyone should identify it, but beyond that, the evacuation obviously did not go how anyone wanted it, and I don't know and I think we know we have to break it into zones, which is gonna be worked out, and I don't know the metrics on it yet. There is definitely a logistic issue on everyone leaving at once. Obviously, it doesn't work. There was a lot of issues with the Santa Monica PD not letting people off, and LAPD, and other issues too, so a lot to work on. I'm on that task force, so hopefully we can make headway. That hasn't really happened yet, but comments on the evacuation.
But was it always that way? I mean, we had all these different plans after various fires and nothing was used.
Remember the '93 fire? I remember watching. I rescued my mom from her house on Las Flores, and we got out barely through flames. Went back to Paradise Cove and watched it. The traffic was not moving at all. And that big giant Coast Guard cutter came right into shore. It looked like everyone was going to run to that. But there was fire engines. That was a nice difference. They weren't up there where the houses were burning, really, but it happened then too. So it's
But not to this degree.
We've never had
not
an
like the entire
evacuation
city
plan.
trying to leave at once, especially.
Because I thought after the '93 thing, we did have a lot of things, but then we didn't use any of them, so it seemed like, I don't know.
Well, I know, Topanga,
We
you
have
have zones.
Yeah, we have zones and they train us on zones, and when they evacuated us, we got a call at 1:30 and said, everybody out simultaneously, all
And-
zones.
And half
And
the
a
zones were
direction.
told to go
So
to
the
the
zones
coast.
didn't
Yeah,
even
half
matter.
the
Half
zones were
north.
told to go to be in your gridlock traffic jam.
Yeah,
Do you have safe spaces in Topanga?
we do,
They
Well,
don't promote them,
yeah,
they don't promote them,
and they're
I
not in
would
every
seem like a
zone.
neighborhood that needs it more than Malibu.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, so Mikey and I were both at the Topanga Emergency Fair on Sunday, and I happened to see a little walkie-talkie sitting on a table, and I started talking to the person next to me, and it was, I know you know him.
Norm? Goodkin?
One of the TSEP.
James, Scott, Norm, Chris Wally, Bryce Anderson,
I met Bryce, anyway,
somebody.
he said, we do, what is it called, top of the hour
Oh, yeah,
announcements?
oh, maybe it was Terry Cox?
Terry,
Oh, it was there.
they do top of the hour announcements, and he did a demonstration during the fair. He said to me, here, do you want to take this, I'm gonna do the announcement in a few minutes. And he went through the exact drill that they do there, the top of the hour announcement. It's
the radio?
very calm, what's that?
On the
On a walkie-talkie, yeah.
Channel 15, right?
You don't, it's on,
Different,
Channel
different
7.
regions.
Maybe the different zones
Oh,
are
no, that's
different.
that's the FRS part. That's
Well, anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, my.
there's a whole lot of things that we can do. I'll stop right here for a moment. If you have not heard, we are having the Malibu Emergency Preparedness Fair June 15th. That's a Saturday at Trancas. And I think, you know, this is where we start to put into action all of these things that we've been talking about since November 9th or 8th. So anyway,
So at the top of the hour, when there is an emergency, they get on that?
yes,
Why don't the firemen have radios?
They're busy, I think.
They're talking to each other, they have radios,
They do.
they talk to each other.
Yeah.
so,
Just the communications seem to be
Their
non-existent.
communications were very bad. A lot of their communications don't work well. Satellite phones, for example, don't work when there's heavy smoke. And cell phones, we know what happened to them. The stations burned up, so the repeaters weren't working. And, you know, then you're back to basically ham radio type stuff.
CDs.
Yeah.
Remember my mother had that, and
Right.
I drove back from New York State and it
Hills
helped me
get in the
immensely.
way, like I happen to be in a canyon,
yeah.
and we can't hear the top of the hour with the normal radio, we have to get a ham with a thing, with an extra, because of the hill.
Well, with the evacuation, I did evacuate. It was not fun. Who else evacuated? Mel?
I was one of the last to leave after my house burned, about 4 in the afternoon, and by that point
It was
I was,
empty.
Because
Yeah.
we were
There
just
was
leaving, not
nobody.
evacuating.
there was
Right.
nobody on, PCH at all.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons we did not evacuate is that we heard from so many friends who had evacuated, and they were parked on PCH for several hours, so I thought,
Yeah.
well, I'm comfortable here at home, so I'm gonna
How
make
did
another
you,
cup
how
of
did you
tea.
hear from them?
Just word of mouth, you know, I went down to Zoom where my daughter was with friends and everybody was sort of communicating, and I guess at that point cell phones were still working down with PCH because the
Really?
towers hadn't gone.
Well, I think they also
The other
brought in
side of
rolling cell
Pepperdine didn't work.
towers, perhaps.
Not that soon.
Not that-
It was,
Not that soon?
if you had Sprint, there was
Some people could have, they
service.
had service, I went down the beach trying to find anybody with service and I found somebody,
Hmm.
that night even.
I found one bar at Pavilions at like.
No, not my
at
phone,
night.
somebody else.
I only knew that 'cause I got 231 texts and I was like, oh boy.
One of
I'm like,
One
ooh.
of the things that really bothered me though, when we did leave, and by that time it was a ghost town, on PCH, and it was just like a war zone. And as I drove down, I remember passing one fire truck on its way up the highway. And there were no sirens going, it wasn't in any hurry, it was like it was meeting friends for dinner. I remember thinking to myself, the whole thing was just so surreal.
Was it LA County or another county?
I have no idea, it was a red fire truck, you know, but there was no sense of urgency at all, and all the other fires I've been through, there has been sirens screaming, and you get out of the way, because they're coming through, and they got a job to do, and this is important, and you get that sense of, we've got a real nightmare going on here. There was none of that.
Well, and I know you spoke to somebody on Dune Drive too.
That was the first fire truck I ever saw, when we finally left our house, went down Blue Water, decided to go down Dune towards Pavilions, and that was it, I was heading out to PCH, I was done. There's nothing to stay for at that point, and, found a fire truck, parked, and I think it must have been in front of the Buckley's house. And, the fire chief ahead of the fire truck, I remember, it was like, sign from the, hallelujah, finally, you know, they're here, they're coming, where have they been, but now they're here, this is good, I mean, maybe there's a chance, and so they were just stood watching the house burn. I mean, nobody was actually trying to actively intervene, And we went up to the fire chief and said, you know, look, our canyon is on fire, and you can still, I don't know if you can still save my house, but you can still save half my street. And, you know, he kind of, okay, what's the address, and wrote it down, but no real, okay, I'm gonna get right over there, and thanks for letting me know. So we couldn't get out on Doom because the fire truck was blocking it. So we U-turned around and we ended up following the fire chief back down Doom Drive. And, I mean, this is a man who obeyed speed limits. If he went 15 miles an hour, I'd be amazed. And he pulled over a couple of times to look at other houses that were burning, and we're behind him going, oh my God, why is he not doing anything? You know, and finally we got to the Grey Fox intersection, and we could see him. He pulled ahead of us, and I watched him go right past my street.
I know.
And I knew then that nothing was going to happen, and that's when we turned down Grey Fox and we left. And the whole
But we'll
canyon
never
was
know
gone.
why that was the difference, I'm sure.
I talked with Tony Maroney this afternoon, talking about you, among other things, and there will be an after-action report, but they generally take about a year. And we got to read one of them from the Thomas Fire.
Thomas Fire Ventura,
It
which
was-
now
it
was
was
like
pretty
15 months ago.
refreshingly honest. Here's what we did well, here's what we did bad. And it went in section after section after section. With that said, it's gonna be a while.
But the refusal to help is a new thing for
Yeah.
all of us.
Yes.
And the
One, we've been very honest with
And the
fire
thing
department
about that is, it isn't one of us, or two of us, or three of us.
Everybody.
It's
Right,
everybody
Have to
saying
be
the
two.
same.
right.
So you
Happened
know,
to me.
Oh, I know.
everybody's saying the same thing. There is no way they can stand there and say, oh, no, everyone was actually doing it. There were too many of
No,
us
we know.
that said that is simply not true.
And wouldn't they want to protect their own turf? I mean, their fire stations are built to withstand fires, I guess, but wouldn't they want to protect their neighborhood? Do they not have any
There
connection?
seems to be a part of it, and I'm not defending the fire department, but this is, in our researching it, what appears to be a pattern, and it may not be all the time, is that most of the firemen that didn't help weren't from LA County. And I looked at my video, and that's where I learned that that was true in my neighborhood too, because I experienced the same thing. I don't know if it's true everywhere, but it appears to be there was a lot of communication issues. No excuses. The people that weren't from LA County did not jump in the game, is how it generally looks. I'm not claiming it's 100%.
But
Which
we've
also-
had people from Arizona, I mean, everything, previous fires, all these guys were
Yeah.
just gung ho,
Yeah,
go.
and what that's about,
Right.
I simply don't know.
Florida, yeah.
Yeah.
93, they were here from
Texas was in my
Montana,
neighborhood.
everywhere.
Yeah.
I know the fire department's gonna, for me, it keeps coming up, and all the discussion keeps coming up, and here it keeps coming up, and it'll keep coming up throughout the bullet points here too. And I think I've had like this really stark realization recently is that, and I've heard this my whole life, I never really realized how important it was, is that you really cannot count on reliance on the fire department at all, period. If you don't have the physical ability to defend your home, you need to leave understanding that they probably won't be there. And it's
Right.
not that I'm demonizing them at all, it's just even after talking to everybody I can at LA County Fire and Ventura County Fire, they will admit there's nothing we can do. And it was a true communication breakdown, hierarchy breakdown, all of that combined with the fire, and I heard it on the radio happening live. And my biggest thing, and I've been trying to preach to everybody, is that don't rely on the fire department. If they come, amazing, you're lucky, but don't rely on it. And also, don't waste your time and breath from now till the next fire trying to figure out why the fire department fucked up, because you're gonna go crazy. And they're not gonna, and if they do change, it might be nominal, but it's not gonna
Well,
fix the
you're
same-
absolutely
the
right,
problem.
because my husband grew up here and he said, one thing you always count on is the fire department won't be there and you'll run out of water.
Yeah.
Just prepare, but all the neighbors stayed and they fought the fire and they
Yeah.
filled up their trash bins, all that. But the thing that just seemed weird to me is that after the huge fire, thing passes, which is always the case, then firemen and historically and everything were there and would help, but they still wouldn't help in this case. It wasn't like when the main firestorm was or anything,
Yeah.
it was much later and they wouldn't help. So that was new to me.
And I hope that, can I say one thing? And for me also, having been through fires since 1978, this one was different. In response, in the size of the fire, in a lot of things. But we got what I thought was a very clear-headed, assessment from Kevin Kirker, who's the head of, CHP for this area. And he said, and I hadn't heard anybody else admit it at that point, there was not coordination between the agencies.
Have we heard that before?
Between the fire department, the CHP, and the sheriff.
9/11?
They were not talking to each other, they were not coordinating. And maybe this is just me, my guess is, you get people who head up these agencies, they're used to telling people what to do, they're used to calling the shots. Maybe they're not trained in coordination.
I don't know. And
We
to
need
keep-
that.
to
But it's
Keegan's-
just a human instinct as a fireman, when you see a house burning and someone says, please help me, and they're just sitting there, usually they would do something.
Yeah.
Sure, we've all used the analogy, if a lifeguard saw somebody drowning, would they tell you they were waiting for orders?
Remember John Watson
Right.
did
No.
that first big council meeting, and he challenged the group of fire engines that were just sat at the bottom of Corral Canyon, and they said, well, we're out of town, we haven't got maps, we don't know where to go.
Oh, then why drive up here?
And he said,
You know?
he said, get in your trucks, head up the highway,
Right.
look for the smoke, turn left, see the fire,
There you
and
go.
put it out.
I'll
I mean, how
explain, there's
simple
one
is
more,
it?
I'm sorry, Mike, I know you wanna,
Yeah,
you wanna speak, I think this is another really important thing. I've had this discussion with a few different LA County guys, Ventura County guys, et cetera, is that for the most part, the amount of training and the equipment that LA County Fire, Ventura, all of them is dedicated towards is not wildland wildfires. It's
Right.
not.
Right.
And the amount of houses that burn from wildfire, and so the fire departments are now kind of a de facto emergency room
EMS.
in
Yeah.
EMS. And if you go to any of the stations, even in Malibu, they have type 1 trucks, they have type 2 trucks, they don't have a brush urban interface trucks. And the departments, the way they've gone with like what you were saying over the last 30 years has gone to a different model. And so, you know, to go back, it's don't rely on them and think that they're gonna be able to stop a wildland fire. It's not gonna happen.
Unfortunately, I agree with you, and I wish I didn't, but you are right.
You're
The
absolutely
change
right.
has come, because in the 93 fire, we were living on Malibu Road, and that fire came down to East Malibu out, and then it started coming down Malibu Road. Every third house had a fire truck in the driveway.
Yeah.
And and I remember distinctly, they said to us, it's gonna burn down to the edge of the street, right across from the house,
But we'll stop it."
don't worry.
Yeah.
We've got it under control, we want it to burn, if necessary, we are ready to phone your house, everyone's gonna be fine. And we were, so there was an enormous amount of trust.
Sure.
And I think
I went through the exact same thing.
one of the mistakes I made was trusting and assuming.
Right.
And that's the mistake I won't make again. And I do think that one of the things that they are gonna have to face over this is the loss of trust.
They,
Oh, that's
I mean,
clear.
it's
Yeah.
just massive across the board.
they got the message.
That is clear.
My mother's in town right now, and we're driving down the highway, and I'm saying, look at that sign, look what it says. Thanks to all who fought the fires. I
Oh,
said,
they're all like that.
Look what it doesn't say.
The people of the neighborhood say
It's
this
so
place, it used to be
carefully
the
worded
firemen.
on
Yes,
purpose.
yes.
And I think that is a huge issue they are gonna have to work very hard to overcome.
So just to follow up on what Keegan said, he really nailed it, I just wanna reiterate the point. So I talked with Dave Riedman from Water District 29 today, we had a nice talk for about half an hour about a bunch of stuff. But he reiterated, the water system's not designed to fight wildfire, it's not. Cause I went over, I am bringing forward an item to try and get them to put backup generators on every pump. That wasn't the issue. So I'm actually gonna change that when it comes to the city council meeting, cause that's not gonna work. It's just not workable. I'm gonna have another plan. That's not the issue. The second houses started burning down, pressure just dropped because water's flowing and it's just not gonna work. So that's not a great plan. And then talking to Tony Maroney tonight, their resources, and we've heard this previously, Karen and I, 1,200 firefighters in the 93, or fire trucks in the 93 fire were in California, and now it's 700. That's a massive
In the whole
drop.
state.
Well,
In the
that's,
whole state.
And the
So that's-
population hasn't gone down.
Right.
Right, and it's gotten hotter and drier and whatever else, so
And
that's
why is-
reality.
Why is that happening?
That's it.
Funding, yeah.
So that's
Well,
what we
it
look
costs
at.
them more in the end, it's gonna cost them way more. after
Are you
the
applying logic
legislature.
to government? That's gonna be.
Speaking of logic to government, Mikey,
Yeah.
when you say that about your conversation with Dave today, I've just forked over $6,200 to the water department to get my certificate so I can prove I have sufficient fire flow to get a building permit down the road. And yet at the same time they're taking my check, they're saying, you know, this isn't designed for this and we really don't have the capacity for it. Well,
Right,
The fire,
do you know
the-
what the irony
yeah.
is we're making you pay for this because you have to satisfy a certain standard, but don't worry, because in the event of another emergency,
We know
you're
that,
probably
yeah.
not gonna have any water anyway.
So what
Part
were
of
you
your
gonna say?
charge.
that fire flow standard applies for a single structure fire. It's not for
A
a wildfire. So what happens is the amount of, they're expecting a certain amount of flow, so if they go to one house or two houses or maybe even three maximum next to each other that are burning because somebody left their kitchen, their stove on, they have enough water at that hydrant to fight those fires. It's not for wildfire.
So why-
It's not gonna
But
change, you
I
have to change.
hope they are gonna make that clear to all of the people who are jumping through hoops, satisfying requirements for driveway width and turnarounds and
We know
fire flow,
that, and it
just to
doesn't
get a
matter.
building permit, thinking that they're doing everything right because the standards are so stringent, it's gonna help them the next time there's a fire. When I went in to talk to the fire guy, he looked at me and he said, yeah, you know, I want 25 width, 20 foot wide, I want this, and that's so we can get to your house in the event of an emergency.
And we know
And I
that.
sat there and I
That's
looked
if your
at him.
cat's stuck in a tree, that's what that
I
emergency
sat
is.
there and looked at him
Can
and
I
I thought,
just-
okay,
can I
I'm
just
gonna be
ask
nice,
one?
and I said, well, that would be nice if you actually,
And I wanna say
It's a
for
good
Mel,
idea. We need
she
to-
had that,
I had the driveway, I
had the big driveway,
Had
she
the
had the big
turnarounds.
turnaround, I've been down it a million
you
times.
have,
The thing that came up a lot on these lately, the last few days, has been like all this stuff going on in the social media, is that, you know, people said, well, wasn't the fireman, there was no water. And I have to say, and I think Malibu West never ran out of water, did they?
No, and Ryder and I talked about that today, it's because we have a massive tank well above our neighborhood, it was all gravity fed. There was
And
no
that's
power.
for you guys almost only specifically, right? Or
Yeah, that's a great question, but I think that where else could it go?
But
Yeah,
there's
yeah, I
so
think
many
some of those
places
parts.
that didn't run, we didn't run out of water till the nightfall, but I think that's because everybody left. So we had sprinklers on the roof, we had sprinklers going all the time, which really saved us. But we had water until the nightfall,
Until the
and then we
tanks
didn't
ran
have,
out.
you know, but they said, they were saying there was no water at like noon or something, and then we totally
Some
had water.
places they had no water early on.
Exactly,
And
exactly.
there
And it's
was,
usually up higher, you know,
Right. I had no
but the
water.
ones, like my daughter's shop had water throughout the whole thing, all the 20 days we were here. I mean, she always had water, and she's, right, once again, but she's by Malibu West, but is lower. But so
And
the
that's a
lack of water
huge
in a
tank
lot
we
of
have,
places
too.
wasn't a big deal. for
if you're
some
low
houses.
enough, you're getting water actually off the main that's coming down
Yeah.
PCH.
Which was
Well,
charged the whole time.
I have to just add, if you have a swimming pool, you have water.
Right.
And they didn't use any of them in my
They
neighborhood.
didn't use any of them, that's right, my neighbor had a huge swimming pool, I mean, her house burned down because she left, and there was, anyways. What about, so swimming pool or, I guess it's the same thing as we have a water tank, if nobody uses it, what's the point?
Well, I think,
You'll
I
have to
mean,
use it.
Yeah,
Yeah, well,
it's
that's
a
true.
stay and fight
listen,
situation.
from where I sit, folks, just to be honest, when my part of writing this report we're gonna go up with, and Karen knows how I feel, we have to build houses that can defend themselves. I mean, that's the bottom line. We have to feel we can evacuate and our home has a good chance of surviving. In this area, from what it looks like, I don't see a better option. The fire, like you said, everyone said, depending on the fireman, the water company, the water district, you know, it's,
But
we're
unfortunately,
gonna look
there's
at
still a lot
house
of old
codes,
houses
landscaping
like
codes.
ours.
Yeah, it's,
Well, and a giant fuel load every place east of Malibu Canyon.
that's the key. I truly believe my house could have survived and might very well have survived had there been brush clearance done. The house next to me was built about 14 years ago. It was stucco, tile roof, everything. It was a complete loss before mine even started burning, and mine was closer to the canyon than that house was. Both of them ended up going, but the thing I really feel would have made a difference was brush clearance in that gully.
Well, that's what I
running
wondered,
down.
because
Yeah.
going around, anybody who lived by a ravine, adios, it was bad,
Yes.
and they all were bad. So who's supposed to, I mean, some of them I imagine are personal properties, but I don't know, is there
They're all
like?
personal.
They're all
They're all
personal
personal
properties.
properties.
And
We
they're,
own
the
down
really
to the bottom of
crazy
the
thing
river.
is, on Point Doom, they're not even mapped as ESHA. So, but
Oh,
everybody
guys.
gives you a hard time if you start to clear it, because they're worried that you're gonna, you know, there's disturb whatever's
Okay,
living there.
but I've lived at my property for 20 years, and I remember the fire department, every single year, out came the brush clearance notice, and they would actually come down the street and down the driveway and come and check, have you cleared your brush? Oh, look, we're coming back.
Okay,
We
so
talked to
here's
Chief
the-
We've had
Osby
long
about
talks
that.
with
So
them
And
here's
about
that's all stopped, and that would have
Yeah.
helped.
Okay, so here's
I've been through
another
the
thing
same
about
thing.
the,
Chief
here's
Osby
another,
told us it's not enforced.
I
so
know
here's
it's
another
not
thing about the
enforced.
brush clearance is that that's the fire department's one bullet solution to how to protect yourself. And the thing is, that's probably like the third on the most important
Yeah.
list. First on the most important list is an airtight
Yep.
fireproof house. When I say fireproof, it means to be airtight, it needs to be built out of materials, it needs to not have wood stacked up next to it. You can have 1,000 feet of brush clearance, have all dirt and concrete around your whole house. If you have a sofa next to your door, your house is toast.
Or even the
Toast, because
doormat.
the embers are
Embers
blowing
are
from a
fine.
couple miles away,
Yes.
right? Anything can catch fire, and regardless if you have good brush clearance.
Well, the only thing I was wondering about, especially in the point, the ravine that comes right down by the, by Birdview and, just comes down there, like that one, for example.
Mhm.
All of those houses, well, part of it is the Point Doom Club. I'm just trying to think, I mean, all of those houses, I
They
don't know
lost
if
3
you
units.
live, yeah, I know, but I don't know who, I mean, I don't know if your home goes down to that ravine, your property?
I live directly across from the Point Doom Club, so
So
yes.
your property goes down
So
to
that
that
ravine is between
We
Mel's
own-
house.
we own
and-
down
So
to
you
the
own that, but nobody cleared it, apparently for years and years and years.
No.
But that belonged to them, so there are a lot of ravines where they don't belong. In my case, my property does not go down to the ravine. And my neighbor tried to, ask the fire department to do a burn, to clear it out, but they wouldn't do it.
Yeah, they're not, that
So,
was falling out of favor.
again, right now, there's nothing left, it's not gonna be nothing there for several years, but it's gonna come back at some point, when that comes back, it's public domain, it doesn't belong to anybody.
Everything belongs to somebody.
Well, it belongs to
County?
county.
Whose land is that? Is it, do you know?
Is it
I think it's.
That's where the goat
MRCA
thing
maybe?
comes in.
Goats.
No, I think
We
it's-
might be skipping around a little bit.
But I think that Keegan
Risk
is right.
mitigation might mean goats.
Brush clearance
Yeah.
normally isn't that big of a
Yeah.
deal. I was just concerned with the massive buildup in these ravines that
Yes.
just funnel the fire.
Yeah.
So
Well,
here's,
I-
like,
They have
yeah.
Malibu goats.
For
That's a
me, the issue,
fantastic idea.
the issue is there's so much reliance and push towards do brush clearance, you'll be fine. You don't hear enough about from the fire department every year as a reminder, just as you do with brush clearance, about, hey, have you hardened your home? Do you have an evacuation plan? Have you checked the soft exterior, have you cleared out the leaves in your gutter, that type of stuff? You don't hear that mandatory stuff, and to me, it's again, this communication, it's just wrongly, emphasized, yeah, thank you, on the brush clearance. So I got 200 feet of brush clearance, I'm good. It's not the case. And it's actually, this guy from Australia.
Makes it worse.
Exactly, there's a
Yeah.
guy from Australia that came out who was the head of all of the Eastern Australia's fire department response or emergency responding. He's saying that all of the studies that they're doing now are saying exactly the opposite, and is that the brush clearance really doesn't matter in a really strong wind-driven fire. Brush clearance is great to help stop the fire from starting, because if there's no brush, somebody throws a cigarette out,
Right.
it's not gonna start. But on a really strong windy fire, even 100-foot brush clearance.
And we both agree on this, because everyone's so concerned about their trees and get rid of the trees. Obviously, there were
Trees are
some.
hands down the most important thing.
Oh
you
my
can
gosh,
do
we
in
have a
property.
whole line where the whole huge firewood is coming right at us, which we didn't see because we have a wall of trees, but they stopped
The
that.
trees caught it.
The trees are, yeah, so the right trees, the right landscaping is very important. 200 feet of dead space is known as what they call an ember highway, just goes straight into your house, full speed, nothing stops it. You want some of the local chaparral. That's
Yeah.
another part of our report that will come out. There's a lot of science, like Keegan's alluding to, that natural chaparral actually is a good catcher of embers. Yeah, it may ignite, but it's not the hot stuff that you're worried about, and it'll slow down the embers.
That's what caught my house on fire.
Then it must have been too close.
My
You didn't have any embers
there
inside
wasn't
your
much of a
house?
setback from the property
Right.
line, and my neighbour's trees were 30 feet high.
Palm trees?
And there were
Palm.
2 palm
Yeah.
trees,
Oh.
and there were a
Palm
bunch
trees
of other
back.
trees, and I saw, that's when we left, because we knew the house was going at that point, and it was that side of the
But
house.
did you
that
get
was closest.
from the outside or
Palm
the
trees
inside?
are-
Like Mikey, you said the houses you saw burn were from the inside.
I saw this
They
the
were from
outside.
embers, and
Yeah.
the first house that burst in flames, and I have video of that, I had to study to figure it out, because we defended this giant wall of flames, and we're defending, and I turn around, there's a house completely engulfed. I'm like, how the heck did that
When did it
happen?
get there?
And I
When?
realized it went inside the house and ignited from inside. This was within 10 minutes, and by the time we noticed, we turned around, the whole thing's on fire. Like, how could that happen so fast? Now I know how. It lit inside in the attic, and by the time it came out, it was everywhere.
Another thing, lack of information, is that most people think that their house burns down because a flame hits the side of their house, and their house catches on fire. Most houses burn from the inside out.
Mhm.
You can hold a torch to most people's side of their houses, it's not gonna catch on fire.
It was that or the side, like, debris under a deck.
Correct, yeah.
Bougainvillea was one, I saw it all. So I know that my neighborhood, 19 out of 21 definitely burned from embers. I don't know on the other two. There may have been flames on the side of a hill.
Right.
I don't have any proof either way, but 19 out of 21.
But like
was
to
embers.
build it, I know there's a lot of simple things you can do that aren't that expensive. I know your mom has been on that. But we have an old Malibu house. It's definitely not fireproof or built with the right materials or anything like that. So there's a lot of them still left,
Yep.
believe it or not.
Well, closing a vent doesn't, I mean, it's just those little wire mesh
No, I know.
things.
But
Close-
still,
Like
There
in
is-
any old house.
There are things you
And
can
close
do.
your eaves,
Right,
and-
your
I know
gutters.
there's things to do, but I'm
Frost
just
check.
wondering.
and the other thing
But
is
there are
side it with
frost check
something
people
that
that their
doesn't
house
burn.
burned down.
Yeah, one in my neighborhood too, the only person who saw check in my neighborhood burned down, but as he told his story, he realized he was in a hurry
What you
and
spray your house with.
You mean the fire
he
retardant?
didn't get it all.
Didn't really do it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Very-
so
very-
it was, you were just talking about fire retardant, spraying fire retardant?
Some worked, some didn't.
So again, that's something I wasn't even aware of.
Right.
I mean, if that was one more thing that I could have had in my fire,
Toolkit.
in my toolkit. And so I didn't even know about that, and I wish I would have heard something, and CERT training would have been a great place to hear about it. But anyway, so that's another thing, how do you get that out? It's not that expensive to have those containers, and it's really easy to hook up to a fire
But
hose.
once again, you can't count on it, cause the house burned that had it. I
Yeah,
mean, it's not.
yeah.
It's just another step. I mean, William's making a very important point, is that what happens all my entire life in Malibu, is we have a fire, we're all upset. This one we're more upset because it was the biggest one ever.
And then we
And a
just-
year from now, everyone's like, where's the soccer field, And
People just get busy and
we
have
we
their
have
other
very
stuff.
short memory on this. So hopefully this is the time we make improvements. There'll be people that do what they do and don't, and some people, it's hard. You can't
And I just wanna say, CERT
rally
training,
everyone.
I think we're in our 3rd round now since the fire. They've been filling up. If you haven't done it, I highly recommend it. If you know somebody who wants to. Also Arson Watch. I mean, Arson Watch is a commitment. You have to decide if you can do it. But the more of us who prepare, I mean, you're not allowed to drive a car without learning how to drive it and taking a test that obviously proves you're a good driver, because look at everybody out there. But,
How do you know they have licenses?
right?
Yeah.
No, but I'm saying, we can all take more responsibility and encourage others to do so. Cause as we've seen, we're not gonna be able to rely on agencies and government and outside
I heard
forces to save
secondhand
us.
at one of the Topanga presentations, I couldn't be there, that someone was talking to one of the fire chiefs about people staying home and defending.
Mhm.
And for the first time ever, he grudgingly admitted that the fire department was looking into ways to have people in the community be sort of, educate. I know you guys are doing something, but in
Yeah, we hired
Topanga
someone.
even, and the fire chief said it.
Oh, in Topanga, I would say, it sounds like me, but I
No,
wasn't in
this was a
Topanga.
fire chief on Sunday in the big room, on the record, saying that they were looking into ways to have programs for residents.
I saw some of those presentations, I did not
To
see
be
that.
educated, and I can ask the
Great.
person.
Well,
Yeah, sure. No, I
Vitamin
did
told
too.
me, which I was really surprised about that he told me this.
Mm-hmm.
But, and it obviously was not the case in the first people that were hit on Cuthbert and Harvester and Horizon, cause that was like,
Yeah, that's-
forget it. But generally, and even a wildfire, He told me that people die when they're evacuating. If you stay with your house, you rarely die. And the thing is, if the fire comes, go in your house, and because it takes normally a while for your house to burn down, the fire will pass you, then you come out and put out all the fires or anything that came inside.
What Tony Maroney told me this afternoon, we got into this a little bit on the phone, is that ultimately he thinks, and I agree with him, and he just went even further, is ultimately living in a high fire is like we have, your house has to be your safe spot. Cause I was like, where are the safe zones? Where are they? He goes, ultimately, we need to make it your home. That's where you're safe. I was like, you know what, well said. Okay, I
And-
got you.
and in case anybody didn't know, the city has just hired a position, a newly created position. They've been through the interview process and hired someone, I hear he's fantastic, I
He
haven't
is.
met him yet.
Very impressive.
He's a recently retired Ventura County firefighter, chief, excuse me. And the position is called Fire Safety Specialist. And one of the things he's gonna be doing is working with neighborhoods like Malibu West, where Mikey lives, with the neighborhood fire brigades.
All right.
Yeah.
And
So
interfacing
it's
with the
just
fire
one more
department,
thing
too.
we need to do, and this, I hear great things about, what's his name?
Jerry.
Jerry. I haven't met him yet, I've heard great things about him, and I think, we're foolish not to take advantage.
Is he gonna have an office here in the building?
Oh, he's gonna be a city employee,
Yeah.
full-time, yeah. In fact, what's the date? I think he starts on the
May
13th.
I think the 13th.
He starts Monday, the 13th.
Right.
Better than Friday the 13th.
Can I mention something, that the new, to rebuild, I had to put sprinklers in my house, and you were mentioning, you know, most fires start from within the house, so hopefully if there's water, the sprinkler in the house will put that out. However, one of the standards they don't, I think, someone else mentioned they had sprinklers outside their house. And, oh, you did, and.
I have them.
And so this is something, that's not nearly as intricate as putting them inside the house. Why aren't they put
Well,
outside the
there's-
house?
There's
I'll
a
tell
very
you
good
why.
reason. There's a
Because
very
if
good reason.
everybody did that, you'd have no water
If there's
pressure.
no water
We were
pressure.
lucky because no one was in our neighborhood. But one thing that I've read about since then is if you put plastic garbage bags filled with water up on your roof, if an ember comes, it will burn the plastic and then the water will come out and put it out.
Yeah, that's the problem with the outside sprinklers. I used it a bit in my neighborhood fighting the fires, one at a time. I was carrying one with me. Saved a house or two that way, but if everyone does it, there's just no water pressure.
So I had this talk
Those
with
systems
this,
are available, cause we saw a demonstration of one in the Palisades.
But we just did it ourselves.
If
We
you
didn't
have a
even-
water tank,
That's
What was
true.
that?
and it's hooked to your.
That's
to
there
true.
was a
to
demonstration,
that,
That's
then-
true.
Oh, okay.
with
Yeah,
this,
there are systems you can make for your own home that are available to buy, and it doesn't take that much water. You don't need much water.
The most important thing, and I told everybody, told Tyler this the other day, because we're going through rebuild, if you don't have a pool, looking at putting in a pool, if you don't have the space for a pool, put in a 20 to 30,000 gallon underground water tank.
Water tank is
And
okay.
that way you have your own water no matter what.
And
And
honestly,
30,000 gallons you can
you
save the
don't
house
need,
easily.
to be honest, you don't need near that. It's the right,
Yeah.
right water at the right time.
Yeah.
If you're gonna install, you can do 4,000 gallons and be fine. It's
Mhm.
actually, I did not use near that in saving any house.
Mhm.
It was literally a garden
Yeah,
hose
cause there's
putting out
just a
embers.
little, usually.
And that's all you need.
Yeah.
It's really.
so I had this long great talk with this forestry fire guy, and after he got past the, you should evacuate right away, ma'am, then we really got down to brass tacks. And he sent me to this website, he said, you can buy a backpack, fills up with water, it has an attached hose, and you can get a lot of bang for your buck.
That's awesome. I could use that.
It's-
Can we
it's just-
move on to
Yeah, we better
communication?
move on.
Can we talk about different communication
The
issues?
backpack
Is that all right?
with water, I don't know, she may
We've
have
touched
this-
on communication, but, I think we could talk about it a lot more.
It's a major issue at the time.
So as it says here, the first thing, we lose power. You know, and a lot of us were at meetings with, SoCal Edison, like the one that was over at, King Gillette Ranch a few months ago, and we were all up in arms over their, PSPS program, the planned power shut off. And we were all, you know, very concerned about that. And as it turned out, Edison did not shut off power.
It just burned.
Everything burned. So we really need to think about what we're gonna do, with infrastructure. You know, we talked about the siren, and in some cases, low-tech might be
The
our best chance. But, yeah, part of the reason reason, I mean, I hated being in that evacuation morass for, you know, it took me 5 hours to get from Point Doom to Sunset Boulevard. But I could listen to KNX in my car. So I could see out my window, I was taking pictures the whole way down, and then I could hear on the radio what was going on. So that was helpful, but we really need to work on improving our power, improving our communications, knowing that we're gonna lose power again.
And what's the reality about going underground, having piece by piece taking Malibu Power underground?
Okay, that's a great question. It's being talked at every level, you know, up in Sacramento. At the last council meeting, I asked for the council, to support writing a letter to Sacramento in support of, I don't remember the name of the bill.
SB 70.
SB 70, thank you, Lloyd. Where any cell tower that burned down, or excuse me, any power pole that burned down be replaced with underground. I don't know what the chances are of that, but I can tell you.
So in my neighborhood, 3 burned down?
Uh-huh.
So does that mean they replaced them all? Because there's no point doing 1 or 2.
Edison has not made any
There's nothing
commitment
at
to
all.
do anything
No,
right now.
but theoretically, if 1 or 2 poles burn down, are you gonna replace a line of?
We could all go around and burn them down ourselves.
If you
It'd be great.
He didn't really say
contact
that.
them about undergrounding the poles in your neighborhood, the estimate comes out pretty close to 100,000 a pole for them to
Yeah.
take the poles out, trench them, put it in there, and hook everybody back up.
Seems like the stupidest thing, I grew up in New York, and they've always been underground. And since before I was born, which was not anytime soon. So, I mean, literally,
Sure,
My neighborhood
parts of
too.
Europe did them after World War II.
Yeah.
It's not a
I-
novel idea.
No, it's
I
like-
mean, literally, we're talking 45 years ago, all the
Yeah.
power
Yeah.
went underground in
Right.
New York. So, this is
Yeah, obviously it's doable.
clearly,
Okay.
it's not new technology.
In the city or in a rural area?
Well, see, that's my question.
Well, it was a rural
How
area.
do you, I'm all for undergrounding, I grew up with everything undergrounded, these wires are the ugliest things I've ever seen. I think they really detract from the beauty of the community, and obviously they're a fire hazard. But even if we could find the money to underground them within the city limits, what do you do about the fire corridors like Canaan? Because when I finally came through 3 weeks later, and you could see the rest of the poles hanging, all the wires out,
Leaning over.
just with the topography you have to deal with, is it even feasible to put those kind of wires underground? And if we don't do everything, is there any point in doing something?
I hear you.
That's my concern, but I'd love to see it
And
happen.
in an earthquake, there's issues there too, underground. So there's it's not, or landslide areas, which Malibu's filled with. There's all sorts of issues that factor in. It's not just cut and dried, unfortunately.
And if anybody was at the presentation that the county did at Elkins Theater on the Pepperdine campus, I think they've done 2. It was the first one that I went to there. Oh, an Edison representative got up and said flat out, we're not doing it, it's too expensive.
Well,
There's more than one way to get it done. I mean, look at Carbon Beach. Everything got
All you have to do is
underground
be
in
a
there.
billionaire. It's easy.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, they have what's called an overlay district, and they're paying a 30-year bond to have underground
yeah. and
utilities.
When that lots are only 50 feet wide, it's less expensive per person to do a mile of this stuff. Because everybody's got their 50 feet, right? Or their 38 feet, or whatever their lot frontage is. If you get onto Point Doom and everybody's lot is 100 feet wide, all of a sudden, everybody is paying twice per person what those people are paying.
And most places aren't even as close as Point Doom.
Yeah.
So, look at, I'm ready, willing, and able to apply political pressure with Sacramento, and, you know, we were just up there a couple of weeks ago. There are so many bills going on right now, a lot of them related to fire, disaster mitigation, but this is something that I think, you know, if it happens, I don't expect to see it for a long time.
Yeah, so I think on communication, there's a few things. I know this on our next agenda, next week for city council, where there's an item to pay to get a repeater spot up on Castro Peak, because the city had, its communication was as horrible as everyone. So trying to get a repeater up there, which is, you know, that guy holds you hostage, and it's not, it's affordable, but it's not cheap. I can't remember his name, but that guy has, you know, makes a fortune on all the communication stuff he has on his property.
Highest point in the area.
Yep, and he guards it with its security guards and the whole bit. He's not letting anyone else up there. So there's that. I know Keegan's neighborhood, my neighborhood, we're purchasing radios so we can at least communicate in our own neighborhood. And we are also getting a repeater so we can get a hold of his neighborhood, because we were completely isolated for 2 weeks. We had no communication at all after the fire. So I think part of it will end up falling back on what we can do for ourselves, unfortunately. What we don't have answers on yet, though I don't, and maybe Karen's got more, but how do we communicate in these disasters when the power goes out? What do we do? Cell is just not looking like a great alternative unless there's something coming that I don't know about. Maybe the backups on each of the cell sites would make sense, because at least we communicate till they burn. So that might be an option.
Well, people from the city were going to, you know, the end of the circle at the Bluffs, with the Little League
It
field.
didn't really work that well either, I tried
Did
that,
you go
I
out
tried
there?
everywhere. But what did work, which we go back to the basics again, well, first of all, T-Mobile came, thank God for them.
Yeah.
And then
Awesome.
they had the tower, and that's the only way we had anything. But you have to come, I mean, it's really interesting, because we had, I mean, one thing about this whole thing gave me just such hope and such pride is how everybody worked together. And we got the information to everybody, because someone came, you know, the old whiteboard, or told people, and the heads of, you know, at Drew at Point, and you know, different people in different places, and we did get information from the citizens, not at all from the city, sorry Matt, but it was true. And we did it the old-fashioned way by talking to one another and putting up, you know, we had different boards so I could read different things and things like that.
Some of that
So-
was actually manned by CERT volunteers, by the way.
Yeah, I saw some of them doing
Yeah,
that.
so I think this is obviously a really difficult situation. So I think establishing communication in neighborhoods is maybe one place it starts, because that was a massive missing part, at least in my.
The
I
only
didn't
problem
even know, in my neighborhood, I didn't even know a bunch of the other people stayed and defended. I didn't know they were there. I mean, it's just as poor communication.
Right,
But you
Mary,
have,
made
you
a
have
point.
some area, and you have some, I mean, our neighborhood, there was nobody, and I didn't know anybody, where anybody was or anything, we had no core. I always felt like, can I come over to some Hawaii or go to the West afterwards, because there's just nobody around.
Well, here's one idea. One idea I think is to require, and I don't know what's involved in it, because this is a tough one. Anyone that has cell service in town, the major carriers, is required to roll in those trucks
The mobile
as soon as
communication
this
centers.
disaster comes, as soon as the disaster's passed. So it won't be the day of, but.
Verizon never did, because we never had service with Verizon. If they did come, it didn't help.
Yeah, so those trucks is one idea. Another idea is, and I don't know what it's called, maybe Keegan knows, he's pretty knowledgeable in this area. Establish a few places in Malibu that are hardened off the grid cell areas, so that minimally, if you can't connect one, you know where one is. Instead of standing on 1 foot by pavilions trying to get reception like I was. So there's another idea. I don't know if you guys have any ideas on communications.
Well, we
During a
had one
disaster.
meeting. We had one meeting, we need to put together the next one, you're all welcome. Mikey and I asked just a small group, this has been 3 weeks ago now, of people to come and talk about communications. Robert Spangle couldn't make it. But it was Hans Letts, Mark Russo, Chris Frost,
Bill?
Bill Swartout,
And
you
what
and
did they
me.
say?
Yeah, what
Excuse me?
What did they say?
Well, you know, the person who was the most knowledgeable in that room was Hans.
Oh, he is.
Absolutely,
I went down there every chance I had.
absolutely. But I want to take a little side note here, back to low-tech solutions. Brian Merrick said something at the first meeting that really stayed with me. he said you need to get to know your neighbors
Yes,
Yep, yep.
across the street on either side of you, because the
if they're
person,
there.
you know, I live on Wildlife, I mean, the person on Birdview is
They're
not
what
coming to
they
save
have.
me, and vice versa.
The short-term rental.
But that's what they did though, I mean, that's what my husband said, you got to know all your neighbors, you
Yeah.
all were there. But if T-Mobile could do it, I mean, we all got those T-Mobile phones, I could call neighbors close, you know, fairly close.
Mhm.
I could call my daughter in Morocco, we could get the internet from their little hotspot thing, I mean, bless them, that worked. And everybody, it worked for
Right.
everybody.
Yeah, T-Mobile, I've been a T-Mobile customer for about 15 years, but boy, this certainly made me even more loyal to them
Yeah, those
than
people
ever.
drove from Texas.
Because they
Did they?
were,
Yes, I
Wow,
talked
I
to them for
didn't know
quite a
that.
while.
they were amazing, and even after we moved back to Malibu, we got a rental house, it took us a month to get internet or phone or TV
I
or
know.
anything
That was
hooked
a
up, and
nightmare.
what saved me was T-Mobile.
Our little phone
They
thing
gave me a mobile hotspot and gave me 50 gigs of data. Of course, my daughter,
So like
downloaded movies, but the point is that they kept us afloat
Yeah.
until
Yeah, no,
we
they were
actually had
fantastic.
communications.
But
They were amazing.
But that was only in our certain areas, so other parts.
And after, that was until like five,
Oh, yeah,
five, and
that was
Henry
after.
Stern was really, he flew back from China to help set that whole thing up, but,
Thank you, Henry.
so, yeah, so during any emergency, if there was an earthquake right now, almost all of our cell phones would work within 15 minutes. The reason why is because everybody's trying to send text, right? And like what Karen said about getting to know your neighbor, like the 3 pillars I've been trying to instill to all of the people that I talk to and friends is that 1, be more self-reliant, don't count on the fire department, get to know your neighbor, and have your own plan. And when I say self-reliant, I mean, you know, if you are planning to fight a fire, have access to water and a way to move the water. If you are planning for an earthquake, what do you have for your first aid? What do you have for your communication with your neighbors, first aid, et cetera. So those are like, I think the 3 things, and everything else kind of just like falls underneath those 3 things is get to know your neighbor, be more self-reliant, yeah, and have your evacuation plan. Yeah, those are like, and I think everything else kind of just falls underneath that, because when shit really hits the fan, you're not really worried about everything else that's going on outside, you're worried about what's directly in front of you, so.
I agree with Keegan's 3 things, but on the subject of getting to know your neighbour, I mean, I was there till it was all over, and when I left, I realised that we passed one neighbour on my street who actually had water, which didn't hit me till afterwards, because we were on the other side of the street and we had no water, and he was out watering his hedge, and he was the only person I saw on my street all day.
So you think everybody else left early?
Everybody else, it's either second home, or they'd left,
Or the
or half
rehabs,
the
and ours
house
is
burned
rehab.
down as well, on my side of the street certainly, but there was nobody there.
We had
So I'm
nobody.
all for get to know your neighbour and working with your neighbour, but I had no neighbours. And the neighbours that were there were taking care of their own, because at that point, it was every man for himself.
It really is, anybody who's sort of new that moves out here, when people say, oh, everyone's gonna stay, your neighbors will not stay in it, they'll leave immediately.
And they shouldn't. If they're not
No,
up for it, they
you're
should
absolutely
not
right.
stay.
I agree with you completely.
Yeah.
But
Don't
I
wanna
don't
leave it
think
in the
that's a
middle.
worry,
Doesn't work.
because they, you know, the old people that grew up here, of course, who knows, but and I'm looking at most people that fought the fires, I don't know how you are, you had a slightly younger group, but I mean, they're in their 60s
I
and 70s.
had my son and everyone else was older than me.
You know, we're all old.
One thing we're forgetting is that this PSPS, they can go for 3 to 5 days, can happen with no fire, and will happen on a high fire, windy, crazy day. So it isn't a situation where we have an emergency, we have a fire, so we will all be home, just with no power. Unless you choose to go to a hotel.
PSPS is, SoCal Edison's
Oh, yeah.
power shut off.
Public safety power
Public-
shut off.
Thank you, the public safety power shut off.
It's really for their bottom line, it's not public safety.
Of course,
Liability.
Well,
it's a liability.
that's what they
Public
named it.
utility safety.
So
Well-
you're gonna be here, there's no emergency, and in fact, there'll be no smoke. So we personally went and got a huge HughesNet internet satellite dish,
Yeah, you
and
said
we have
that.
backup power, you know, you get a lithium battery, you can keep it
Uh-huh.
up for days.
Do you have the Tesla batteries?
We have those too, but before we got the Teslas, we bought something, you know, not as expensive, cause we were like researching it, for so anywhere from 500 to all the way to Teslas, you can buy a battery that would keep up your internet dish, which is pre-fire, right? You're in this PSPS nightmare. So you'd have internet, you'd have phone, you can call 911, you can hear that a fire has started, you can report a fire, because it's gonna be during the Santa Ana almost.
Is that really expensive?
No, and I brought a handout that shows,
Okay.
you pick your budget, you pick your price point. It's very doable.
Thank
Is
you.
that
That's great
becoming
info.
common up in Topanga, Jane?
I'm spreading the word. A lot of my neighbors are going for the Tesla whole house batteries, but like
Uh-huh.
at the fair, I ran into a lot of people who either have a lot of shade or they can't afford it.
Topanga, that's right, they will have a lot of
Right,
shade.
or they really couldn't afford it, and so I brought the list of all the different, like Gold Zero makes a Yeti on all different
Mhm.
price points, and you can get portable panels, which also help if you have shade issues.
So,
And you could live for days,
So
but
just
I'm
in-
mostly talking communication, I'm not talking air conditioning
Yeah,
or refrigerator.
Yeah.
just
Just
in the
communication.
essence of time, because I know we can't stay here till 10:30 or whatever, because we haven't gone through very much, should we try to go through like some
Yeah.
points that people are really concerned about? or whatever?
Absolutely, 100%.
So, well, I feel like we've covered the response to a large degree. I can sum up what one person said to me the week after the fire. There were too many sheriffs and not enough firefighters.
Yep.
And too many sheriffs from out of town who basically had no sympathy for anybody who was trying to get back into Malibu for any reason.
No,
including
I-
my
I-
friend.
I know you couldn't even get out of your
I
neighborhood.
rented a house online that I didn't even get to see in person because I was so desperate to find a place for my family to live ahead of the hundreds of other people I knew were gonna be looking. And when I stood there at Canaan after trying several times to come through and offered him my ID, said, look, I know my house is gone and I don't even wanna go there, I'm trying to go look at a place to live. He looked at me and he said, I don't care. You can show me your driver's license, but I'm from San Dimas, so your address means nothing to me.
He almost got arrested.
And,
More than once.
you know, that kind of attitude wasn't helpful.
They were
were
following
not
orders.
being-
I know, and that's
Yeah.
what you hear, I'm following orders, and after a while, it's like, you know, dude, do you have any humanity?
What were you gonna say?
No, they don't.
They were
They
not
don't.
following orders, they did not have
They
a
weren't
unified
consistent.
set of orders
Exactly.
every day.
Yeah,
You
that
would
is
go
true,
from
too.
one group of guys to another group, and they had totally different
Yeah.
instructions of what they thought was useful. And finally, one day, I went to some petty when I was trying to leave my neighborhood, and they said, well, I can't let you come back. And I said, well, my office is right across the street, here's the card for it. I go, can I sign up for something so you know what I've got? He goes, okay, here, you sign this notice of acceptance of responsibility. And I said, this is terrific, they've got it organized. I went across the street, I came back, shift had changed. The other person goes, you signed what?
Yeah.
They didn't have a clue
They
what,
got trained by the fire department in communication.
they didn't talk to each other before they showed up for work, let me put it that way.
We certainly had long talks with the sheriffs about this, and it's definitely, obviously, a huge issue. I don't know that we've come up with golden answers on this one yet.
Have
other
we
than-
ever had this situation though before? I don't know.
Not to this degree.
I mean, when
And we know
when
a
they
couple
just
things that
blocked everything.
exacerbated it, and one was the photo of the guys on point doing with guns. That absolutely is when it went to DEFCON 5.
It went to like
So
lockdown,
yeah.
and that photo went
Yeah,
viral.
that photo backfired hugely, so when you really felt locked down, that's, if you think about it, that's when that photo came out.
Yeah, you can thank those guys for sure.
Yeah, that didn't help. That's just
Hide
part
your
of it though.
guns.
That's
Yeah, it
just
said
part of it.
looters will be
I
shot
said,
on
hide your
sight,
guns.
the sign they had.
But
Yeah,
how frustrating
we-
it was to be out of town and to have genuine reasons for wanting to get back in.
Right.
And then you're hearing of your friends whose houses are being looted.
Right.
And it's
I
like,
think
well, then
that
how
was
did
very
the looters
exaggerated,
get
very
in there?
exaggerated for
Because
their own
nobody else
benefit.
can get
That,
in.
we need to really do a follow-up on that. There's so many rumors about looting and so many,
And it was used as
You
an
mean like
excuse.
actual numbers?
Yeah.
So-
It was used as
so-
an excuse in
Yeah.
my mind.
As someone who didn't leave, I can tell you, I thought the looting was a kind of highlighted. Actually, there was looting, and there was more than I think people realized. They actually tried not to broadcast it. I was there when we caught a looter, right at the Malibu West Beach Club. He'd been circling around, and one of our people got suspicious, and next thing they nailed the guy. He'd broken into so many houses. was a local contractor too, how's that?
Yeah, they were generally local.
Yeah, and then I was there when some people in Avon or some big boat came into Broad Beach because they figured no one was there, and the sheriff saw them and they arrested that whole boatload. I was up Bonzel when they had people try and loot them during the fire. 2 guys in a pickup truck. I was there on Cavallari. I saw the break-ins on Cavallari. Houses that didn't burn were looted while they were locked out, and it was more of a nuisance,
Drive had
broken
looted,
glass,
I know
broken
that.
stuff. So that does
Guernsey.
create this awkward situation. I think in my discussions, and maybe just get your feedback on this, it's a tough issue. There's no great answer. No one's gonna be totally happy. I think the people that get the proper training ID, whether it's CERT, arson watch, whatever, volunteer fire brigade, I've been trying to negotiate that we have more flexibility in movement. We're signing a waiver that we're accepting the risk in advance. Outside that, it gets weird. There was days after, and you were around, when the roads really were totally dangerous. I was up in Malibu Park with guys with chainsaws as we were trying to make it through. Anyone could get through. There was just stuff everywhere in the road. And so there was that. And then there was the crews came in, and they came in force. It was actually fairly impressive. And they were going down a road, just cutting everything with chainsaws and pulling it.
Even
It
the
was
Sunday after the fire, there was an army
army of people.
Edison trucks already out here, and, you know.
So
Yeah.
there's those
I drove
issues
around
that are
with telephone poles
complex.
at 45-degree
I
angles.
don't know the better answer
The
on
only
all of it.
two things that I could say is, first of all, we have to figure out a way after the fire, if people could come back to their homes, because their homes
a good
burned
point.
from an ember. And if they were home, they could have taken a garden hose or a
Yep.
blanket or
So my
anything.
house burned on Saturday.
Yeah, but so
Because
so
nobody put
that's
out the
tough.
fucking hot spots.
Yeah.
Well, all these fire trucks are sitting at Zuma.
I put out as
In
many as I
Malibu Park,
could.
Yeah.
We
But-
saved 3 houses
but-
on Sunday, or Saturday, so I know what you're
I
saying.
mean,
But the other thing about the looting is
That's a good
how
point.
I feel, cause I actually didn't witness any looting, so I really thought it was overblown, but if you did.
I thought it was, and
totally-
then I saw it, I was
Okay.
like, ooh.
I heard
But the
police
thing is, but
radios
listen, would you
constantly.
rather have your jewelry stolen, which is probably insured, or whatever, or your house burned down? And I would go for, hey, if you wanna come in and loot my house, fine, there's nothing in there that's, you're not
So
gonna
how
take
do
my
we
husband's
successfully
thinking.
figure that out? Cause clearly it was,
Yeah, you
this is a
couldn't let
big disaster.
everybody back in, you're absolutely right,
Yeah, I don't.
but, I don't know, one member per family
Well,
or something.
if we get
I
enough,
don't know.
maybe CERT members could be
I'm-
activated as sort of neighborhood watch.
Yeah.
That would work.
I-
With communication, go check on homes. I'm making this up.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think of some way, if you're outside and it's just too big a disaster to let everyone in, how do we do this?
Well, so we did it afterwards, my husband and I, but there's still the ridiculous things of people's houses. I know one house for sure, his gate was locked, there's no way I could get in there, and I had never told him this, I don't even know who he is, it's just way down the street. But literally, bush started on fire and burned his house.
I saw the
After.
same thing and it was really painful to watch. It was
And we
really
couldn't get
difficult.
to him at all.
I had to stand in the middle of Canaan and wait till a sheriff went by and got in front of his car that made him get a fire engine to save 2 houses on late Saturday. They were just gonna burn, we couldn't stop it. So I hear you, that's painful, that's difficult. So, that's an area that's a lot of conversation with the sheriff.
I think that's true though, if we could have people in certain neighborhoods, or it's really, we don't really have a lot of neighborhoods, you do, but it's
We have
streets.
areas, I think we can identify it, I think we can create areas even if, where there isn't one. There could be the Encinal area, which maybe goes to Decker, or, we can, Malibu Park's an obvious one, Point Dune's an obvious one,
The
there's,
Melbourne Park's too big for just, we'd
Sure, it
have
can
to
be
have
broken into
streets. Yeah,
zones.
yeah, we could be north and
And you can use
So-
nextdoor.com as a way to reach out to people.
No, you
except,
couldn't.
no, because no
We
communication.
had no.
No,
Go for it.
ahead of time.
Oh, yeah,
Ahead of
yeah,
time.
okay.
Ahead
Sure.
of time. In
There are
Topeka,
neighborhoods
we
doing
used
it
it
on
actually
watch.
during the whole thing, and when they opened up our roads without announcing at all, and we were like ready to kill, we were put out on Nextdoor.
Yeah.
For all the people who stayed, keep an eye out, keep an eye out.
Wow,
Yeah, it is
Okay.
very powerful, it's what you bring to it, and if you get good people on it, it gets better.
how do we certify as all good people?
Well,
I'm just kidding.
It is hard though, we don't really have a neighborhood anymore, we really don't.
That's been an issue in your area for sure.
Neighborhood's gone. Yeah.
So,
But also a bunch of the rehabs burned down, so there is that.
That's-
I just read an article.
They moved to the other side
Well,
of the
Hans
village.
Betty saying that they're fleeing over
They're in the
hill,
valley,
so.
yeah.
I
read
saw, it
that,
was in the LA Times, I believe, I read that.
So, I mean, that's sort of a side benefit.
So,
Maybe that, but not
Not
for
for
the
them.
people over there, but now they're gonna feel our pain.
Oh, we're sorry.
So where can we go from here?
we have skipped around, but, so volunteer responders, you all know there's CERT training. You all know there's arson watch. It would be great, and I hope we will see more activity with neighborhood watch and those kinds of things.
And the city will come out and help on
We
everyone.
need a volunteer fire department. We need every
Well-
willing person to be we need a volunteer fire
Well-
department here.
We're not gonna have a
Everyone wants
volunteer
it.
fire
Why
department.
not?
Because we're gonna have volunteer fire brigades in neighborhoods.
Which is different.
Well,
Technically, yeah.
Because the organization-
I think it depends on the neighborhood. Where I live, you know, there's like a 50%, I was always
Where
gone
do you
during the
live?
day, I'm home at night. I'm not home during the day. So a brigade is fine, it won't work in my neighborhood. I wanna be part of because if there's a fire in Malibu West, I wanna participate. If there's a fire up at Yerba Buena, I wanna participate, because they're 5 minutes from my house.
And I agree with you.
And I think the other part of it is you have enough training so that you can fight your own, and people from Malibu West would come over to me, or people from Malibu West would go up to Yerba Buena. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, that's the idea with the fire brigade, and the reason I'm saying it's technical.
And the
with
fire
human
safety
grenade and
specialist.
department is that at some level, it gets organized at too high of a level, like by the city, and that's not gonna happen. That shouldn't happen. It's not a city deal. So, but let's not make the geographic area so small potentially. And one thing we're doing in our brigade, which we wanna roll out around the city, is everyone has to be, that's why you have to be an arson watch and CERT trained, because you are also committing to helping other neighborhoods, not trying to be. So maybe we need to define the areas, how they make sense in certain parts of Malibu. So maybe there's it's not Encinal, it's, I don't know what to call it, let's come up with a name.
Okay.
A larger area to get more people. So you got Kirby Kotler up there included, and you know, you're up towards county line maybe that's a bigger area. I don't have the details on that,
And
and
how
that's
could that
something.
have worked in this one? It couldn't have.
It all helps.
It's too
It all
much.
helps. And the guys up in
After.
Corral Canyon, who
Yeah.
had organized with the fire department unfortunately, ended up getting their fire engine, which they had
Wow.
bought, but the fire department had stocked the shelves on the fire engine.
Yeah.
And so they came up and confiscated it and took it off somewhere else where it saved 2 houses. And
Then
of
it
course,
wasn't
they left them
I
to,
thought it wasn't used. Well, Paul Moore
Right.
talks about that down below for 7 hours, he tried to get them
Yeah.
to put a water drop, and they didn't, and it burned down.
So, yeah, the call fire program
Program.
has value, I guess, in some places. It's not something I'm interested in at all.
I understand.
So
Yeah.
the fire safety specialist, who is gonna start this Monday, this is really what he's charged with.
Right.
So,
And I'll be calling him Monday.
yeah, I assume he's gonna visit neighborhoods, he's gonna have meetings here, and this thing needs to come together, so.
And my impression we'll see is, it seems like, I got to do the final interview with him. I was pretty impressed we could get him. It's like he's just retired. He's younger than I am, and he's fit and ready, and he really gets it. I was like, wow, I thought we'd have, some older guy like, and no, this guy's like in his prime, and he is committed to helping Malibu set up this program. And, that's what he feels his job is, to come in and really set this up and make it work and figure it all out with all of us. And, so, my indication was talking with him was very impressive. We'll see, who knows, maybe interviews well, I have no idea.
I've heard that from everybody.
Yeah, so-
Will he be starting like CERT training, fire preparedness or fire volunteers, something to make people, to give people hands-on
I
experience
think
of how to.
Susan plans on him taking over the CERT training. It's all gonna roll out. I don't think day one he's gonna be.
But CERT
No,
training
CERT training's
didn't do
already
me any
happening.
good for fire
They're
preparation.
changing the program, don't forget a
I'm
little bit.
sorry.
And it's
They
not
have
just
it-
a fire program, so you're right. CERT will never be a volunteer firefighter.
No, but that's
Yeah.
what we need. We need something separate from CERT. That's-
Right.
They can incorporate it into CERT as a small section, but they need
Which they've done.
as I'm, again, I'm
We're gonna have our
focusing on-
first training of our volunteer fire department in late June. So, and he'll be invited, and so will a couple people from LAFD, Fire Department. So, the answer is really right now, we don't know exactly how this ends up, but we know where we're heading to be able to defend ourselves as best as possible. I don't have every detail yet, and that still has to be created by all of us. We all have a chance to have really valuable input in this. And neighborhoods may be different, for sure. It's a great point. Not every neighborhood in Malibu is even closely and remotely the same. We have to take that into account.
It's
How do we-
huge.
How do we
This is
do
a
that?
very unusual, it's not like your little community or big community, it's just,
It's Malibu.
up and
It's
running,
Malibu.
yeah.
It's wonderful, amazing, and
if we could get,
dysfunctional.
if our support for volunteers, I just think there has to be something, like the city could have so easily, and I know they'll say, well, the police won't let us, blah, 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 but just get a truck with stuff, and we didn't ask them to do anything for us, just not stop what we were trying to do, but still to have that in place, that the people that stayed here, that are gonna be here, obviously we're not gonna leave, I know they wanted us to, but just to have that facility so that people aren't coming from the ocean on surfboards, is that what support for volunteers mean? Cause that has to change.
Well,
Possibly.
one thing is that the emergency bins, as it turns out, they had things like cots and.
They were for earthquakes.
They're ready
Yeah.
for earthquakes, and I
It
think,
really wasn't,
We opened a couple of them, we're like,
yeah.
I just went through the CERT training, and we got to go into one of them and look around, and obviously we need some big bins full of rice and beans and stuff like that, because
MREs, whatever.
yeah, the prepackaged food, when people were being brought food on Point Doom, and the sheriffs were trying to stop it, that was ridiculous. It
Yeah.
was so stupid. It was so incredibly,
express yourself, Paul, express yourself.
I'm losing words.
It was
so
so
horrible.
It
It was
drove the
ridiculous. Or
CBS
water.
camera people crazy that they were going back up to Studio City and bringing water to the people on Point View
Yeah,
who didn't.
Well, there
Water.
was a lot, there were cases, there were hundreds of
Brought
cases of
in
water
by
in
the- there were.
Oklahoma. Yeah,
Brought in
But if you went there, you
and
couldn't get
cans of
back to your house.
gasoline and.
from the ocean.
Everything
Which
in
is
the-
ridiculous.
I drove some in,
Well, people.
but I got through because I was in a city marked car.
But Karen, do you remember the emergency bins at Malibu High School and the PTSA?
They could-
Yes.
And how every 2 years, whoever was in charge of health and safety
Yes.
had to go through those bins and
Yeah.
shut
And
out all
then-
the water and buy new cases
Yeah.
of granola
Which
bars.
we paid for.
Which we paid for, but we had a system and it was constantly taken
And
care
you
of.
know
It
what
wasn't
happened
just-
during the fire? You couldn't get into them.
They couldn't get into them, they lost the
I was
keys,
just,
they
me and my
couldn't
son
get-
Emmett, we tried
It
for
was
2 hours,
horrific.
we could not get into them.
Wow.
But we put out fires at the high school. So then, while we were trying to get in, I'm like, go put out that fire, okay.
Gotta get those granola bars.
They're
Never-
looter
we
Yeah.
groups, but my point is that we
could not
had
get into
supplies in case of an emergency, maybe we didn't think through the next step, how we had to.
No, but
do
there
How
will
was
be,
somebody gonna
there
get in
will be a
them?
huge
Yeah,
outpouring
you're
from
right.
the outside. I mean, you
You're
can
right.
never count on anything, but there's so many people out there that just so wanted to help, and obviously we got all that stuff, which was huge. There was a ton of stuff here.
part of the
So-
But
reason
it
there
could've
was
been
that
in a
much
truck.
of an outreach was because the damage was localized. If there's a big area-wide
Right,
earthquake,
right, you're right,
if it's not here already, it's
Right.
not getting here.
right, you're
That's a good
absolutely
point.
right.
That's back to the self-reliance thing, it's just like.
And I think
Yeah.
the tricky part becomes the balance between those that are here being supported, but there's no way to let the entire city in an emergency. Let's just use Woolsey as an example. It just wouldn't have worked,
No.
not for a number of days. So that, we gotta find that balance, and that's why I'm kinda coming back to, maybe the answer is CERT, Arts and Watch, whatever, those are organizations that train specifically to be here to help in an emergency.
And can they override the sheriff though if they're being?
That agreement has to be
That's the problem.
pre-made
Yeah,
and,
we
and,
have to
and,
So,
done.
It comes
Yeah.
down to common sense, because
Can't have
there
it at
were
the top.
enough people who wanted to help.
You had honorary Carter,
Yeah.
I mean, she's a trained nurse.
Now, doctors, nurses,
You
we all know.
medical
Well, I
personnel.
had this 90-year-old couple, so I was coming back and forth with
That's
the horse.
scary.
I was coming back and forth with the horse trailer, taking out my neighbor's pets. I even saved the rooster that woke me up at 5 a.m. every freaking morning. But, so on the way down on Sunday, I was just passing through up north with the horse trailer, and I brought my car in. And I got a text from one of the neighbors and said, you know, these people's family, they're in their 90s, they live on Calpine, they can't find them anywhere. They've checked every shelter, every hospital. Is there any way when you're up on Cuthbert getting your neighbor's extra 2 horses, would you please go to Calpine and see if they're in the house? Just bang down the door, whatever you have to do. So I load the 2 horses. The cop gives me all sorts of shit, as if I'm gonna stay there. Like, once you load horses, you're leaving. You're not gonna sit there in the horse trailer with 2 horses in the back, like, doing nothing. What? While there's still areas on fire? So I told him, I'm like, look, why don't you drive around the corner and I'll be gone by the time you get back. So he just gave me the worst time. So I said, well, I'm just going around the corner. I'm just gonna check these, this couple on Calpine. He said, no, you're not. I said, okay, so why don't you check them? Because here's the address and I don't know them either. She said, that's not my responsibility. I don't have to do that. They should have evacuated, even though they can't. And,
What a dumb fuck.
Thank you.
I
No,
don't
but
think
there's a
they
lot of
should.
older people that were afraid to evacuate, they really were.
Or
They
in my
didn't
neighborhood,
want people to
yeah.
know, because they
Yeah.
thought that
They're
they
in
could
their
make
They're
them.
unaware. is the
and
big
he
thing.
with
said,
the
that's
woman in my
their
neighborhood.
problem. They didn't evacuate.
They didn't want to leave.
So I of course, when I got
Were
back.
they
up
there?
north,
What's the end of the story?
everybody I
Yeah,
could
really.
find. That,
Did you
know,
find them?
we-
Were they there?
We actually did find them.
In the house?
I got one of the neighbors that, was also, had evacuated to Burbank, and she, told me who to get down at Zuma. And I got somebody whose phone worked at Zuma, and I said, could you find this person at Zuma and send them up there to go check that out? And they were at home. They just
Yeah.
needed to.
You're resilient, well done.
Well,
No, but
what are you
they
gonna
do
just
stay
leave
in
them
their
there?
house.
No, you're not.
Right.
You're not gonna leave me
But
there.
it shouldn't have to be that way.
But
And that's
what
what we're
they-
trying to prepare for next
You
time,
think
because
it's-
it was that way, and it was horrible.
We would,
Instead of giving someone trouble with a
people
horse trailer,
treat
they
it like
could
they're
have
the
looked at these
enemy,
people.
like they were criminals, and
I-
that's just wrong. And
I don't know how we
we
change
got
that,
no help
Ellen.
from the emergency services that we needed help from at that time. That was the time for people to rally around and get on board and help each other, and all people.
Which they
got was a-
did.
Was a big fat wall of no.
Oh,
Yes.
not
Well,
in
not
from
the
the
official.
So,
sources.
let's take this energy and how do we improve? That's what we're after right now. I can't,
That's a
I
tough one
can't change
though. How
the
do
past.
we change the police department? How do we change the fire department? I don't know.
The city will never be able to tell the fire department or the sheriff what to do.
But
But
I-
we need
think
to,
it's an ongoing education we have to make with the people who run the sheriff's department for the area. Because if we have a big meeting with the people who were in control of the sheriff's department during the fire, that person just got reassigned.
Right.
And now we have the new person who's running, Lost Hills. And she seems really wonderful. She shows up at meetings, she's listening, she's thinking about it. That's great. She's gonna get reassigned in 2 years,
The
3
deal has to be
years.
higher up.
Well, yeah, and those guys are all having the same problem. And it's the ongoing education of what's going on and why we're doing it. They need to keep understanding it.
It's constant education too, because it's like, you know, there's quite a time span between, hopefully, disasters, and we
We would
forget
hope.
all about it.
I just wanna say, I just remembered, I know we're all tired of going to meetings, but on Thursday night this week at 6 p.m. at, I believe it's the Agora, excuse me,
Villanueva.
Agora, City Hall, there is a sheriff's town hall.
Villanueva, yeah, that is.
You get a question?
It's Thursday night.
You have to go out of state.
This week, 2 nights from now, Thursday night, 6 to 8:30 p.m., Sheriff Villanueva's Town Hall at the Agora, City Hall. So if you're interested, that's happening, and I don't know the format, but I'm sure there'll be a Q&A, and I
Just
can
don't
think of
get
a few
arrested.
questions.
Well, let's continue so we get through these things
Yeah.
though too.
Thank you. Thank you,
Repopulation,
Carla.
are we on?
Get up here and get this meeting going.
Come on, it's only been
You
2
just sitting there,
hours.
you're just sitting there, come on.
Repopulation, it was just kind of silly addressing that for East Malibu, and I know that the response was, well, we weren't sure, It took us a really long time to make sure it wasn't over, but basically we knew that it wasn't gonna hit there. And they took so long to repopulate those people, which was ridiculous.
Yeah, I can share one thing I know, and I don't think the fire department's gonna talk about it, and this is my opinion. I got to fly in a helicopter around the whole fire zone, which is very educational, and the guy who flew
And you
me-
could see how close it came, I know that.
you could see something very obvious to me, in my mind, and then I've been up on mountain bikes and looked at it from there too, and you can see it. The fire went right, and for miles, right up to Malibu Canyon, and then crossed it in like two places just a little bit. So I think if we're wondering where resources were, my guess is that's where they were because they did not want it to
To
go
go to
east
east,
and
no.
burn thousands of homes down. And I think that's a difficult story to tell for the people
Who's
In
which,
West Malibu.
which are in West Malibu. My guess is, this is just me doing my own in my brain, that it
That
ran
was
by
their
them at the
stand.
freeway, it went to the coast, they couldn't get ahead of it, they couldn't go through it because the roads were blocked, as we know.
Or they could have come over Malibu Canyon.
And so what did they do? They fell
Made their
back
stand.
and kept it from going
They
east.
were lucky that the wind was blowing west and they had time to get into position to stop it.
So that's my guess
Days
how we ended
later
up
when it
where we
tried to
are.
cross again.
They made a decision and, you know, Big Rock and
But
everyone
still,
else.
why didn't they let the people
Repopulation's
in?
different, yeah.
Yeah, the repopulation is. yeah, that's a
Well, I
tough
mean,
one.
No, for
At
East
my house-
Malibu, it should have happened a lot earlier than
I
it
think
Many years.
repopulation really helps when you district Malibu
Yes.
into zones. You guys have it, if ours continues from, since you guys are also,
Are they the same as the evacuation zones, the same kind of?
yeah,
So,
so
yeah, zone is a zone is a zone.
since you guys have zones and you guys
That's good.
are also on,
That's the answer.
Lost Hill Sheriffs, our zone should continue on past your zones.
Oh,
Ours
yeah,
would
sure.
start at
Maybe
nine
wanna go back and check.
and head north all the way
Stay
up to
there.
15.
When they make your zones, make
They had
them,
the
make
option
them better
of
than
going
ours.
back.
On ours, they took a map and they just
Grids,
wrote
yeah.
grids,
Yeah,
and
ours
they're
are-
not
ours are-
logical with streets or anything.
Right.
Oh, like
So
they did
get
in the
better
Middle East.
zones, right, get better zones.
Yeah.
So that was done by government then probably, it's not
Yeah.
logical? Okay,
Yeah.
just kidding.
No, but you could
Government's
improve
so
it that
logical.
way.
Um, get them filled,
So that's a good point in Topanga, so the zone is the zone is the zone.
the zone is the zone, you know your zone, I like that, that's
A lot
really
of
valuable.
people don't.
And,
they
and
don't.
our zones, I just mentioned to her, is that our zones have to continue on from theirs because we're also Lost Hills. And if a fire comes down,
Yeah.
which paying for, it can be zone 2 from what, Malibu or zone 2?
Yeah,
from-
I was
We
told
only
that
have
on
like
Sunday
8
at the
zones.
emergency fair.
Yeah,
So we should
Somebody
go up
said
to
to
like
me,
40.
start your
So-
numbers with
9.
a certain number, thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, so.
You have 8, so we start at 9,
And 9, head north from 9.
maybe even 10, give them one more
I
to grow.
personally would
Right.
start at 10,
Yeah.
I'm a number.
Yeah.
Go double digit, yeah, me too.
So, anyways.
That's good input, I mean, probably
But for what
incremental
it's worth,
improvement.
when it came time for evacuating, you already heard, everybody out of the pool.
It was just,
And when it was
well,
time for repopulation, it was just boom, they took away
All
the
the
people at the road.
Yeah,
They didn't
and
zone us
we
back
got
in.
no notification,
I
right?
heard. So the zones are a theory,
So don't count on the zones, okay? But just
Don't
please,
count on the
please,
zones.
Don't count on anything.
don't, you know,
Yeah.
The most important part
Back
of the
to
zones,
Keegan.
most important part
Reliance.
of the zones is the evacuation thing, is that you can say on that text, zone 1 through 5,
Exactly.
head north, zone 6 through 8, head east,
Right.
zone 7 through 10, head south, whatever
Yeah.
it is. And that can be, that's 2 lines of text, not even.
you
Whereas
should be a public safety guy someday, that's awesome.
Okay, anything more on that?
So now on to the category of
Rebuilding.
rebuilding.
Permitting, I still wanna really, really hope, because, thank you, you brought it home. The 100% is what I feel should be, and we found enough places in the budget that we could do it. So I would really hope that it's 100%.
I think you're gonna have good news there.
That's gonna work.
Thank you. I got the.
I
last
can neither
one.
confirm nor divide,
Wanted to
divide, I can't
support
speak.
that.
Confirm or deny that
Let you
that
know
didn't work
that
out.
I'm in favor of that completely.
And I also would hope that future councils do the same thing. We can't bind
No,
next year's
No,
budget
we'll
or
just
the
go
year
as we
after,
go.
but
Do
I
what we can do
think,
as we go, that's where we're
I
at.
think it'll,
I can't tell you the
Be the
expenses
recommendation.
that are adding up, and
Oh.
I have not yet even made it into
Oh,
planning.
it's horrible.
I now have to remove the rest of my foundation.
I'm not doing it, but I hope.
So my debris removal budget is been and gone, and now I'm looking at double that, just to get down to my caissons to be able to get a structural engineer in to design something new, so the costs are absolutely shocking, and
Yeah.
it seems just overwhelming.
And
So
just everything they have to go through, and I
may not
know it's
seem
really,
like
I don't know
a
how
lot
to change
saved
that.
for 13,000 in fees, but believe me, every dollar right now really, really helps.
Well, listen, I mean, the reason it's so important, and no one put it better than Stephen O'Neill, if you read the email he wrote.
It's true.
He said it in a way that, like, I was sitting home that night going through the budget, which is, you know, massive, and luckily I have a lot of experience on budgets, because this was complicated. Looking at it, and emails are plinging in like just every, 30 seconds, and I'm reading them all as I'm going. His came in, and I was already gonna find that money, but his said about,
We'll lose our town.
yeah, just the way he worded it, I was like, I just had so much energy.
His
And I'm
email
like,
was
okay,
unique, and it was,
we got this, we're
Made sense.
making this
I
make
have to
sense.
tell you, most people I talk to, they're
Fabulous.
not coming back.
Well, it's different. We're gonna lose a lot of residents. We're gonna lose some of the fabric of our community. That's why this turned out to be, to me, so vitally important to try and, do what we can. There's a lot of ends to this whole thing. The insurance industry is a nightmare, as we all know. And I got to spend one-on-one time with Laura, our insurance commissioner, by chance. I did not know who he was at the meeting, because I didn't expect him to be in skinny jeans and pink tennis shoes. But,
that's exactly like
and so I'm like talking to this guy, I'm like, oh yeah, oh, you're him. And
Yeah,
you're
that's
like,
him.
you're like 22 or something. He was, but we had a great conversation, and he understands his charge of what he has to get through. He's not a body that can make the change. He can only bring it forward to the Assembly and Senate. It was nice that Henry Stern was there, and Henry, if you were there, was literally said, this is not, he looked at everyone else, he goes, not on anyone else but me. It's me to make these changes. Making the, Laura wants to make the 3 pages of the front of your insurance policy, clear, easy English, understandable to everyone, not this 27-page thing that nobody can read. Because there's a side where you could say, well, everyone should have read their insurance policy better, except you can't understand it even if you did read it. So that's a no-go, and that's why I think waiving the fee in
And
this
also
case
people can't afford,
makes
even if they
sense.
don't have enough, they can't,
Well, and I asked him, are we heading towards a period where we will not be able to insure in a high fire zone? Because I thought he would say yes, and he did not say yes. He said, I think where we're heading is that if you build a house, if you have a house that's fire resistant and checks these boxes, they have to discount it way down. Which made me think of my house, which I remodeled 2-3 years ago. And that was one of the things we did, was we made it very fire resistant. And State Farm was not gonna insure me at first when I talked to them. And I described the house, and we had a friendly conversation. He goes, you know what, I'm gonna send someone out actually. That does sound like a house we're interested in insuring. And they did.
But they have to allow, and it's gonna sound silly, for pre-existing condition. The houses that didn't burn, you can't just be, sorry, Charlie, you can't get grandfathered in.
Well,
I don't have an answer for all that. There are things we can do to pre-existing conditions, but that costs money. Are the grants available?
But insurance, it's not just a money-making venture, it's, well, personally.
Paul, what were you
It is for
gonna say?
them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a difficult situation. I don't think there's a golden answer.
Maybe with some state support,
Um,
state money.
On the permitting, and for those of you frustrated on rebuilding, the interesting conversation I wanna share is our one with Lester Tobias. Cause we decided to
Who's
sit
Mel's
down.
architect and
Well-
mine.
Well, we sat down with what I think is the most cynical, actually, he called himself, I don't have to, cynical architect in Malibu,
That's why we
particularly.
get on so well.
Right, kindred spirit.
I don't think he'd mind us saying he probably is the most cantankerous architect in
I
Malibu.
don't know
think
about
he'd love that.
cantankerous, cynical. I'll go.
Cynical.
Cynical, yeah.
He has a jaundiced
He's also a good friend of
view
mine.
So we
He's
asked
a
him a
realist.
simple question: what can we do with the fire rebuild permits? What are we missing? Can we do better? He just looked at us. He got quiet. He goes, "You'll never hear me say this again, but the city's done a fantastic job." Both of our jaws were
We
like,
were like,
"What?
wait, what?
Like,
Yeah.
can you explain
Well,
that
then
for
how
her?"
come so many people are complaining?
And I'm gonna get to that. And he said, listen, I understand people are upset about certain parts, geology and things like that. They've been there 50 years, why didn't you do geology?
Archaeology.
He goes, I absolutely understand their frustration, but it has to happen for a variety of reasons. When your lot's been there that long, and then they've cleared it and scraped it, and they've taken 4 feet of soil and they have to put it back, if you just allow people to build without checking on that, you're gonna have problems down the line, and it's gonna, houses are gonna crack in earthquakes, et cetera, so you go.
Well, and the codes have changed.
And
Since
so
those
the
houses
codes
were
have
built.
changed, so he goes, I know people are upset, but I have to agree with the city, and this is Lester. He said,
Wow.
this is what they need to do, and here's why this is hard. And I've said this before, we're looking at hundreds of homeowners that never wanted to build a home, they don't know how to build a
Plan
home,
on it.
they don't have the money to build a home, and they don't know what it takes to build a home. And it's a real, that's why professionals do it, well, it's really hard. In the best of situations. Maybe the golden lining here, cause there's no golden lining for the people that burn down, is,
Don't have a safe house?
well, there's a safe
There's
house,
that.
that's true, it'll be a much less burnable house, even if it's not to the codes I hope we bring in the future. But is that, I think a lot of this can stick in Malibu and people don't have to go through this again. Because we have learned a lot by, Malibu's wanted to streamline the development process and get people in their houses much quicker and cheaper than before. We have that opportunity now for homeowners. We'll see what happens, but
Well,
the process is painfully long if you've never built a house in ordinary times. You never get your permit in a year, is that?
Year and a half was the,
Average.
for the last 15 years, if you got your permit in 18 months, everybody thought you were a genius. Okay?
18 months?
18 months, it's totally
Now-
ridiculous.
I went to them right before the fire and they said, we won't look at it for 18 months. Won't look at it for 18 months.
Yeah, now
So-
we have
so-
that opportunity for change, because it's
Yeah,
unfair. It's
this is
unfair.
what Lester said, and I couldn't agree more. He said, now that the city has demonstrated it can do this with fire rebuilds, it needs to be able to do this with all building, with all permitting. And we were both kinda like, yeah, you're right.
Well,
And
I don't
there's-
know if I go with all. I'm
I'll
gonna
turn into a
slow down.
developer.
Well, we're talking about single-family homes here.
Okay,
We're talking
but
about-
also that is something I'm sure you've taken in, it's a difficult situation with the 100% permit, waiver, is that, because you talked about the owner of the home at the time of the fire, that they are the one that's rebuilding the home, because, for example, if I was a developer, oh, no permit fees, great, I'm gonna buy all this
Oh,
lot.
no, it only applies to the
'Cause
owner at the time of the
it's
fire.
difficult.
In a
Now,
primary
the process may
residence.
stick, that now, if that person comes, let's say a developer buys a lot from the old neighbor that gave up and left, which is a lot of people, they'll still be in the expedited process, but they won't get the fee.
Their fees
waived.
won't be waived.
There's the difference. And to me, doing the math, and I'd love Paul's guess here, cause he's in this space. So I'm thinking that instantly, there's about 30% of the applications won't get their fees waived because of that. Does that sound in the neighborhood to you?
We haven't had anywhere close to that much
Too early.
activity in the sale of lots, and I've been telling people who burned that they really need to go ahead and work on this and get the permits. It makes their lot much more valuable.
That's true.
And they may actually, if the city is as good as they say and get it done in 6 months, they may actually find that they have the money to start the rebuild at least. And, if they sell it to somebody who, when it already has permits, or it already has the septic system and the foundation in, they're gonna do much better than they are selling it today. And the other thing that people have a concern about is if this mansionization thing you're gonna be talking about in the next few months happens, the value of their vacant lot to the next buyer is gonna be cut in half.
Well, that's a huge thing though, Paul, we have to do that in my opinion.
I disagree with that assessment, but
disagree
we can
with
talk
that
about
too.
that later.
We don't have to talk about it.
It's just that our whole neighborhood
go
is.
get
What
my-
about organicides?
Let me go get my mob with the pitchfork, and then we'll talk
No,
about
but
it.
our
Do
whole
it- do it
neighborhood
a
will be
meeting at MAS.
mansionization as big
We're
as
gonna do it
possible.
at the planning commission.
We talked real briefly about insurance, I know it's not on here, my suggestion to the city is that there's so much misinformation out there in regards to insurance topics, and there are so many important, bullet point things that most people aren't aware of. I've heard a neighbor of mine the other day said, my insurance is only paying for a year. I was like, it's state law that they pay for 2 years with an opportunity for 3.
Exactly.
It's state law.
That's
And he's like, no, they only give me a year. And that was just the other day. It's 6 months down the line, and he's still under the impression,
You're
so.
bringing up a great point, and
There's
the
always
city has
both
put
points
this out
of
massive amount of times. The problem the city has is communicating with the way and people actually see it and hear it. And that's been a huge challenge. They spent tens of thousands of dollars advertising the local magazines and all this, but
Setting up
at
a
some
separate
point,
website.
I'm even guilty of it. I'm like, I gloss over it.
That's a lot of.
That's a
money.
tricky part we need to figure out better, and because it's literally, if you look at it, we put that out so many times, but even I'm guilty of it, just goes right on by.
Well, I know you came to the insurance commissioner's
Yeah,
Yeah.
presentation, and then, for anybody who doesn't know, there were people here from, all the different insurance companies and the, California State Insurance Commissioner's Office,
But not from Fair Plan.
but not from Fair Plan, meeting with homeowners one-on-one about their specific project and questions. And I will say, I think you all know, the city has set up a separate website called Malibu Rebuilds, so you can get rebuilding and everything Woolsey related information on the city website, but there's a dedicated website only, Malibu Rebuilds.
And just as an aside, the question is, will some of us be able to get insurance, or I guess, I mean, will Fair Plan still insure me? I guess they will, I hope so.
It will, but it won't be enough.
But I didn't, even though I'll have a fire-resistant house with sprinklers and all up to codes, I live in an area that's only insured by Fair Plan. So I don't know if because I have a new fire up to codes house, that the other, because I'm in the area I'm in, I still won't be able to get insurance with State Farm, will I, or?
You may be shocked. You may find that because as part of your rebuild in your neighborhood, the water line size is gonna be increased and the stored water is gonna be increased. Farmers in Allstate are still writing policies today, okay?
My area?
Not in your area, but in
No, they're
Malibu.
right in your
I
area.
mean, let's face facts. Right after the fire, you couldn't get insurance in Malibu from Lloyd's of London. They were turning people down, trying to buy a house on the beach, and they were floating premiums 6 times as high as normal and not getting any takers at Lloyd's of London, because the way that works there is it's all a bunch of individuals who decide if they want to take a flyer on insuring a house. Well, all those people decided to go to the casino in Morocco instead, you know. So, but that's all changing, and Allstate is still writing in Malibu. So Fair Plan, you may find that we may finally be rid of Fair Plan.
It's all have to do with risk. It's outside of our hands. There's really nothing we can do that I'm aware of. It's all about risk tolerance and metrics and insurability.
My chauffeur is gonna be here any second, we're gonna reduce to being driven around right now.
Well, I thought you were gonna go home in that.
No, sorry. All the way to point two, Mikey. So I'm gonna have to run, but on the insurance thing, my insurance has been fabulous, Farmers, and they
That's great.
pretty much paid out everything. They paid out my rebuild policy in full, but my extended replacement policy, they only paid that out if I rebuild and when I get a signed bid from a contractor.
Yeah.
So that is almost making us rebuild, because we can't afford to leave that kind of change on the table. But at the same time,
Interesting.
I can't even sign a bid with the contractor until we've got through the construction drawings, and we can't get to construction drawings until we've been through all these other hoops. And right now, we are in hell over our foundation, which we were trying to save, and now we're finding out that we almost certainly can't, because the
What
spec.
year is your foundation?
1989,
Yeah.
and my house was built just
That's
before
not
we
new
became
though,
a
the
city.
93 fire, they let
and
people keep the
my-
foundation.
That's
Yeah.
not,
Codes have
that's not the
changed.
issue, it's
'Cause
not even the codes.
They're not lasting, is
It's
the
not
problem.
the codes, it's the developer who built my house as a spec house, who cheaped everything, including the foundation. So we're only finding this out now that the house is burnt down. So, now I'm
That's
dealing
painful.
with this,
And that's an opt-out, yeah.
I've got my neighbour, whose house also burnt down, and his is the 14-year-old one. He had to put in the mother of all foundations.
His house is set further back than mine. He has, I think it's 50 pilings going down 100 feet deep, or it's 100 going down 50 feet deep.
Originally,
It's
when he
one
did
of the two. This is what he was made to do, to put in his foundation
This, the 2 to 1
14
supply.
years ago.
Oh, we put on a balcony, and the guy that built it says, if
He's,
there's ever an earthquake, go stand on your balcony, because I had to go down so far and do ridiculous in
my
his mind
neighbour
things.
spent $500,000 on his foundation to satisfy the city of Malibu and get through building and safety. So I am next door, looking at my bomb site of a property right now, absolutely terrified at what that is now gonna cost me, and wondering if I will have any money left to build a house on top of it. So this is what is scaring so many people, are the requirements, because I have existing caissons. And then it comes down to, well, obviously they're not gonna be deep enough and wide enough by today's codes. Building and safety is saying everything that you're doing is great, but it has to be brought up to code. And it's those dollar numbers that are so very frightening, because if you tell me I have to pay 13,000 in permit fees, well, okay, I can suck that up. If you tell me that foundation is now gonna cost me 250,000 more than I was counting on, that's a massive amount of money, and it's very,
The
very frightening. And I
foundations,
will
the
tell you,
septic are gonna be huge.
I have lived here 25 years, and if my insurance company would have paid out my full rebuild policy plus my extended replacement, I honestly think I would have been over the hill and gone by now, because it is overwhelming. The enormity of this is really, really hard to comprehend. And just when I think we're on a good path, and I've got a great architect, and you know, I've got the right people in place, and we're still uncovering things like this, and you just look at it and say, I don't know where bottom is on this thing. And my neighbor up the street is much further ahead than me, but she has told me that they're now making her bring the rest of her property up to code. And her wall that was...
Talk about Lonnie.
Talk about Lonnie. Her wall that was up to code when it was built is no longer up to code because the code has changed. So now they want her to slice her wall in half, because she can't have a solid wall. She can have a half wall with slats on it or something, but air has to see through. Her gate is no longer okay because
So
it's
this is from the
solid.
city?
Yes,
Why
and,
can't they-
and it's things like that.
Why-
You just say, wait a minute here. My house burned down, but my wall is fine. My gate. So it's not an open blank check to go into every single aspect of someone's property and say, right, well now we're going to bring the entire property up to code as well, not
That's
just
not
the bit that
good.
burnt down.
That's
isn't
not
good.
something we ought to be doing.
And it's not.
I agree.
Because I'm looking at my wall, and I'm not going to tell you how high my wall is, because it's higher than the 42 inches the city will let me have. Am I going to have to cut my wall down as well?
I see, I'm not sure that's accurate. I know that's what Lonnie wrote me
I
too.
hope she's wrong.
Yeah, I hope she's wrong too, because that doesn't, if it's not, it's the first time and only time I've heard it. So, it's solvable, and you know Lonnie's, pretty anxious. So, I'm just trying to help her as best I can to push it forward. So, she's been in contact with Reva and
And
Reva.
the fire
with-
department.
I'm sure
And
she
everybody,
has.
yeah,
She's
so,
been
well, and I
very
made sure that
active.
connection happened, and she did a great job on that. So, that brings up a point though, when anyone has these kind of problems, please get a hold of me or someone, because we have really been able to help some people. Working with William still, I think we're making progress on difficult issues.
We have.
Last night I wasn't so hopeful, today I'm more hopeful. It literally sometimes, particularly the people who are leading, who are first, like Murph in my neighborhood.
Right.
He's got his permit probably tomorrow, complete, done, ready to build. He's found all the problems along the way, and I let him know, thank you, you're helping everyone
It's kind
behind
of
you.
the canary in the coal mine.
Some of these codes too, they're not arbitrarily picked by Malibu, some of them are based on state.
The statewide codes for seismic resistance and stuff like that are gonna be expensive for people. And if you lost your septic system and you have to replace it, you're gonna have to do the new one, which is gonna cost probably somewhere between $50,000 and $85,000.
Oh, I've heard 100, but
Well, you can easily spend that on it. And if you were on the beach and had to put it in and dig it in between the house and the street, then I've seen people spend $250 on it. But it's not, for most of us, we're not gonna have that problem.
So far, septic's good, but
That's
if I
good.
change
add one extra toilet in my house, puts me over the trigger,
And
then
that's state code too.
I know.
And they're supposed to revisit that.
I don't know the answer.
I'm not sure, next year or
It's
something
very
like that.
weird, cause we did an add-on of like a sunroom. There's no sink, there's nothing to do with water, and we had to have a whole septic thing.
Well, your sunroom looks a lot like a bedroom to me. And I think,
There's nothing
Yeah, some of these
there.
things, so communication's key, and, so we've had some very, I've had some good luck solving some issues along the way. I can't, the only issue I don't have an answer for at all right now at this moment is Gail's house but it wasn't a fire burn down, so that's in your neighborhood.
Kind of a
Well,
different
that's,
category.
that's on the other, that's a whole different neighborhood.
It is,
It's the
it
same
is.
neighborhood, but it's a whole different
It's a whole different deal.
geology and things.
well, she's got a foundation that's
Yeah,
beautiful,
The
a
foundation's
beautiful
done,
foundation.
but,
So other issues we've been able to solve, so on permitting.
Anything else?
Permitting is, communication's king. I think some people who aren't used to this process sort of hope they'll just flow through it and sit back and wait till they explode and go insane. Communication's
Yeah.
really, really
If
important.
people are having a problem, don't just take it.
Yeah, don't take it at all.
Tell the council people, tell anybody else.
Contact us, come to the city, we'll
And it works in the
put you
county
together with
too,
the
by
right
the way.
person.
We haven't gone
Are you
to
having a
that.
problem, Tyler?
No, we just haven't got to that point yet.
Okay.
Let
What
everyone
about
pave the
you?
way.
Sorry, my writing's here.
Do you need help?
No, I'm good, thanks. Like the bell.
Your chauffeur.
Okay, anything
Thank you,
else?
Mel.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your
Thank you
input.
guys
Is
for
that
everything
your
you're
purse?
doing.
Thanks for your input, it means a lot.
We know how hard you're working and we really, really do appreciate it. You guys can just throw into this and
I'm just gonna go home and drink heavily later.
It's your fault, Mel.
I need to start drinking.
No, I'm doing a sleep study, you said like the drinking doesn't help.
I don't drink much, so I can say that. I say
I'm
that
about
in
to
jest.
start though anyway. All right, thanks
Are we
guys.
gonna talk about landscaping
Thanks, Mel.
codes now?
Yeah.
Landscaping codes is a really interesting one,
It is.
and we've learned so much
You should ride all the
in
way
this
home.
area. There's so much information and science on landscaping codes, it's actually
Well, you're the
fascinating.
expert here.
I would never have thought I'd be saying the right landscaping to be fire resistant involves trees and bushes everywhere. It doesn't involve denuding your property at all. It's very fascinating science, it's pretty well documented. Karen was the first one to bring this up. I think some of the obvious parts are, railroad ties are gone. I think your standard wood fence isn't gonna be in jeopardy on a code review, because they were a disaster in many people's properties that led to houses burning down.
Well, but my first, the first item I brought to council after we got sworn in,
Fire Safe Council and,
was directing the staff to bring back a proposed ordinance banning highly flammable, non-native
there's a
vegetation
whole bunch.
and landscape elements, on fire rebuilds. I wish I could make it go farther on existing property, but what we're looking at right now is fire rebuilds. And the three big offenders that we all know are palm trees, pine trees, and eucalyptus.
Although your pine tree was fine, right, Keegan? I don't
Oh,
know.
no, we
I've
don't
heard
have a palm tree.
Pine.
Oh, sorry, yes, pine, yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
this is
like,
replanting.
it's such a, this is like, I mean, if you think changing the fire department's hard, imagine trying to educate a bunch of people that everything they've been told for the last 15 years is wrong
Yeah.
about planting. And it's like, I don't even wanna go down that route because it's so complex and it takes so much time and attention to detail in terms of educating people how to properly plant.
We've spent time with
It's
your
just,
mom.
there's no, there's just no way to properly educate people to the depth that needs to be done. But I do genuinely want to, I try to share as much information that brush clearance does not mean you're all good.
Right.
And denuding your property and putting DG everywhere also does not mean you're all good, and actually
The opposite.
potentially heats up your property
Right.
faster, dries up all your plants faster, and also creates, like what Mikey said, a
Yeah.
freeway straight to your house.
A lot of
So-
science on that too.
Yeah, and that's been also, those two things have been proven that they're not what that foolproof, safe, approach is, and, all the people that are going around cutting down all their trees on their properties, saying that they're gonna burn, the trees are gonna burn their house down, it's like,
Palm trees, My
Pumpkin's
experience,
bad.
cut them down.
Cut 'em
Yeah.
down.
Just move on,
What are the-
Yeah.
make
what
a
are
new
the-
plan.
What are the
Yeah.
best trees to use? So I had wonderful shade trees, but they're gone now, of course.
Are they gone, are they gonna grow?
No, if they weren't, the fire,
Edison?
no, the people that did.
Cal Fire
the
guys?
Cal Fire destroyed everything.
Oh.
They just.
So what, here's my personal feeling, and there's many options. Keegan and I went mountain bike riding this last Sunday, and I took photos. What's really amazing is from the first time we rode this area right after the fire, every tree was completely dead. There was not a leaf, not a branch, just black sticks, nothing left.
But they come back.
They're coming
They are
back.
really coming back.
After how long?
These trees have so
Yeah.
much growth on them, it really is shocking. I have all sorts of photos. I shared them with our assistant city manager, Lisa, because she was trying to survey the Charmley area and figure out what to do and all the stuff that needed to be cut down. And my advice was,
Don't
let
cut
it
it.
sit,
Wait,
let
yeah.
it sit for 9 months. Don't open the park, let it heal. And she said, and I showed her the photos, and she's like, oh my God, you're right. We gotta just let it heal for a while. So native oaks, the native trees are amazingly resilient.
Resilient.
And they look dead after this fire, and I'd say the
Sycamores, too.
vast majority of them are coming back, 70–80%.
So what grows fast and what's a good, because
There are
LA,
websites with tons of information.
And we
The
can-
city had a green
We
building.
can get you that
The
information.
resiliency workshop, your mom was one of the presenters about 2 weeks ago. There's a lot of information
There's-
available on that.
A woman that was there, she was right here, she emailed me today finally. Tracy, she had the program on native plant, doing that around your house and just how it works in much more detail than I'd seen.
If
And
you
so,
look up like Native Plant
Cassie.
Society.
Was it in Cassie?
Cassie,
Yes,
that's what it was.
fantastic presentation, and it really, it's like 15 steps of what to look for and what to think about. Every one of those steps look golden to me, so I will gladly share that information, and I
There's
told
gonna
her
be a
straight
link on the
out,
city website,
can
yeah.
we just brand it you and put it in our report? Because I think she really nailed it,
So
which is.
this is though what we've been talking about, the trees are all fine, it's the embers that got inside the house, that picture.
Well, you mean, you just look at that pretty famous aerial photo of the Paradise Fire
Oh, yeah.
of that neighborhood, and you see it from the air, and every house but maybe 8 are burned down in this whole neighborhood, and the trees
All
are
the
fine.
trees are there.
The trees don't care, they're fine. Forest of trees, they're just fine. All the underbrush sent embers and houses burned down, and very telling, very.
So it's counterintuitive,
Oh,
that's why
it's
it's hard to
totally
educate.
counterintuitive.
It's not even counterintuitive, it's exactly the opposite of what Cal Fire,
What we've been
Oh,
told.
what
I
Cal
know,
Fire
I
and
know,
LA County
I
Fire
know.
tell you, oh, you
That
got this
too.
big pine tree right here, that's gonna burn your house down, or you got this big oak tree, it's gonna burn your house down, you should probably cut it down. It's like,
Right.
I had a huge oak tree adjacent to my house that burned down, and the part of the tree that got burnt down was close, like facing the house, not the outside part of the tree. It survived and went on, and
Oh, yeah.
The home burned the tree.
yeah, the home burned the tree,
Yeah.
not,
The home burned the tree.
yeah.
There you go.
Wow,
And,
that's very telling. That's
And
very
my uncle
telling.
had a trailer surrounded by pine trees. All the trees were toast, but I'm pretty sure it was because the trailer caught on fire and just took out all the trees.
It's funny too, and I know there's exceptions. I did not see while fighting the fire, and I thought it was odd, but I've been told I'm not entirely right. Other people did see it. I did not see eucalyptus
I
turning
didn't
into these
either,
giant torches.
but I heard that too, but I never saw it.
In-
We don't have any,
In 3
but-
days of playing with fire, I did not see one.
But I read about people said, they're my neighbor's eucalyptus tree set my other neighbor's house
Okay,
on
so-
fire, but I
Now,
only
there are
heard that from
200
one
different
person.
kinds of
Yeah,
ukes,
that's
so I
what
don't
I
know the
thought,
answer
yeah.
there. They're oily.
Well, and there's tree maintenance too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If
if
your
you
tree
have dead
is
trees.
well maintained.
There's a lot of dead eucalyptus, and those ones do go up in flames, but for the most part, a lot of the eucalyptus that everybody's cutting down, it's sad because those things are probably fine, and they're helping create windbreaks, they're bringing more
Right.
moisture,
Yeah, it's
Right.
really,
and,
they're alive, so if the ember comes to them, it doesn't burn, it comes to your dead wood on your house.
And I gather there's
That
only
tree
one
survived, like,
native
huge fires.
palm tree
The other
to
pine
California,
tree. Oh, pine.
and I don't know which one it is. It's certainly not the ones in my neighborhood. They were just ember torches.
Oh, that's what they're,
that'll be
We should think
painful.
about wrapping up.
Yeah.
It's 9:00. Thank you all for being willing to come and stay this long. So post-disaster, support, I mean, the city has put out lots of information, had lots of meetings, asked for community input. We, after some changing of the guard at the very beginning, Mikey and I became the co-chairs of this disaster response and recovery ad hoc committee. And we will be putting out a report. We do have a website. If you want to, and you can email us at our city emails. You can also email the committee. It's called Recovery Ad Hoc at malibucity.org. But
Yeah, feel free
I'd
to
like to
email
know,
me,
does anybody see a big gap in the post-disaster support that the city?
I think it's city and outside agencies. Some of them
City,
have
well,
done a
I
great
mean,
job, so.
I would say, information that you've gotten from the city, support you've gotten from the city, does anybody see a big hole there? Tell me.
I would love it if the city had repopulated City Hall at least a week earlier than
Oh,
it
yeah,
did.
that's a definite.
What do you think
We
about a
should've left.
mobile EOC?
I think a mobile EOC is a great idea, and I think
We want to talk about that
I
tonight.
think we really were handicapped during the fire and during the shutdown by the fact that,
We didn't have a city hall.
yeah,
Well,
And-
they were all in Santa Monica.
I know,
I know, but
that didn't work.
I mean, you were out here
And Unified
and
Command
you're
was
being
moving
told
around.
if you
That-
leave your house, you're not gonna be allowed back in, and you're holding a meeting in Santa Monica. And I'm going,
Right, you
And the
can't get
meeting in
back
Santa
in.
Monica was a disaster by everybody who went there, it just killed them all, literally. They were just like, forget this.
Yeah, that was not a great meeting by any stretch of any imagination.
yeah.
I think an EOC is great as long as,
Mobile EOC?
yeah, a mobile EOC that goes to pre-designated safe zones,
Plus
Zuma,
bar,
Plus, et
yeah.
cetera, yeah. And as long as its real intention is to serve the people that stay back, and it's not a thing of information for people that leave or whatever, it's really a thing for, hey, you stayed back, you try to defend your home, or you're stuck here for whatever reason, here's some resources for you, here's information, here's a mobile cell tower, here's a Wi-Fi hotspot,
Well,
first
but
aid
a
home,
mobile
whatever.
EOC also has to fulfill a function of a city operating.
Right.
On some degree, so that it can be, maybe it can be a bit of both. That's what the PIO.
Yeah.
That's where they come in, they're supposed to be by EOC, take that information,
Right.
and disseminate it to the public.
Right.
I think, for a lot of reasons, no matter how much that was happening, many of us didn't know was or wasn't happening, because we had no communication.
Right.
So I can tell you, I don't care what the PIO put out, I didn't see it, and that was hard. And so, yeah,
Yeah,
that can be improved.
And if you had TV, the public crawl for the city on Channel 3 was totally unchanged from the second day on.
See, I had no idea, I
I
couldn't see
never
it.
even checked it.
Right,
Wow.
so a lot of upgrades need to happen there, absolutely, figuring out our communication.
Did Matt do that?
Unmultiple.
That, we should let him know that.
Now Matt knows that.
Matt knows that.
And Reba knew it because I talked about it, at the time. I called in. How come nobody's changing it? How come nobody's updating this thing?
How come nobody's around?
Well,
Yeah, I mean, to me, I can sum it up to what horrified me to discover, it took a couple of days, that I was known people's primary source
Yeah.
of news, and I'm like, I was, what are you talking about? What, how can that be? All I do is
still
once a
am getting
day I go by
thank yous. It's like,
pavilions
thank you
and,
for telling me about my house. And that's just
did I?
wrong
I don't
too.
even remember that.
The excuse was, well, we didn't wanna give out wrong information. Well, go take a picture, whatever. People were just desperate and crazy because they didn't know if they had a house or not
And
have
the
a house.
only one I didn't take a picture of, I got wrong, so, but she forgave me.
No, but you might
Told
get
her it was
something
there.
wrong, but it's like, the majority of people, that was really bad, really, really bad.
Yeah, difficult, yeah, so, I
They
don't
never
wanna don't wanna
literally
quote
suffering.
Chief Osby, lessons learned, but I will. It's one of his favorite catchphrases.
Hopefully he'll be on his way out soon.
He's a good communicator, I'll give him that, as opposed to, the sheriff's side, I've not experienced that at all. Some of the people further down the sheriff, ranks were phenomenal and great. We were unable to get a meeting with our sheriff. We did meet our sheriff briefly, but we never were able to go over this. We met with one of his right-hand man, can you?
Which sheriff are you talking about, Villanueva?
Villanueva, yeah, other agencies we met with the people at the top, but.
Was Villanueva even in when the fire happened?
No.
The election didn't get announced, the results
Yeah.
on that until
Yeah,
a few days later.
right.
I don't
and
know
the
exactly what
transition
day.
took place after, I think the transition took place after the city hall was already open.
I think there was a lot of political breakdowns, in my opinion, and lessons learned. I mean, that we had, Trump here before Sheila Kuehl is, that doesn't make sense.
Interesting.
Well,
Yes,
Trump and the governor. And
Oh, yeah.
interestingly enough, they were led on their tour by the guy from who ran CAL FIRE, who abruptly resigned the next 2 weeks later at the advanced age of 52.
Yep, replaced by Tom Porter,
Yeah, so,
who we met with.
We met him in Sacramento.
And I can paraphrase that conversation. You would not agree with it, but you're on your own. Good luck.
Yeah.
yeah.
Love what you're gonna do. Let me know how it goes.
And I'd still like to find out who the National Guard, who had a C-5 loaded with water and Phos-Chek, sitting up in Oxnard, idling on the runway, couldn't get approval to launch from somebody in Sacramento.
Sacramento. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that one.
The city requested the National Guard and that was denied.
Why? We've got this, we've got this.
We don't, I think it was potentially a power struggle, but
Yeah, it's
It was
definitely.
denied by the sheriff though, right? It wasn't denied by the
They
state.
sell tacos out of it.
I'm not sure, that's above our pay grade. I'm not sure how
Way
that
above.
works.
I was told it was actually denied by the sheriff.
9 yum yum.
May have been. I don't know.
So, 'cause we
I
have
heard
a
that
national
too. I
guard.
don't know how that mechanism
How
works.
long before we get rid of the sheriff department and get their own police department like Culver City and all these other little cities have?
When we have a population about that high, the metrics, I'm a math guy, I can't make the math work. I can't even come close.
Yeah.
I know people have screamed for us to have our own sheriff department. It's
The payroll, the pensions.
the reality of the facilities and on and on. I've played with it
And
because I
sheriffs,
like the
they're-
idea.
they're the
I love
only-
Malibu Police Department sounds
And
so
sheriffs
cool.
are the only game in town, right?
Yeah, LA
Yeah.
County.
And have we taken a super close look at it? I know some people have. I've taken a medium close look at it. I was like, ooh, yeah, no, it's money we don't know how to find right now, so
Hopefully
maybe in
we'll
the future.
start getting some more value once the Santa Monica City College thing, which is gonna have a sheriff's office in it, so we'll only have to pay them when they arrive there, instead of paying them when they arrive at the other end of the canyon.
It's true.
And change clothes, and then drive through.
Speaking of payment, all those fire engines were here that didn't do anything, how much do we have to pay them?
Nothing. So we
Cal
don't,
Fire pays them.
we don't pay LA Fire. We're what's called a legacy, and we didn't actually know that apparently we didn't know that as a city until the fire.
It
We
doesn't, the
thought we
fire
were a
department doesn't go
contract
through the
city.
city budget.
We're not even a contract city. We're a legacy. It comes out of your property taxes. So they put fire departments here and our fire, stations here and we approve them. They have nothing to do with us. They happen to be in Malibu and you can see how much control we have over them.
So they're all
It's
LA
not on our
LA
budget.
County.
It's all LA County Fire. We don't pay them.
It's coming out of your property taxes though.
Yeah.
And it's, and because we're a high-value community, they're getting a pretty good chunk of,
Yeah, I've seen the number and we have a decent amount of fire stations. Didn't mean we had
No.
fire people.
and they're really good. When my mother-in-law was living with us and having all sorts of health issues, the EMSs showed up, all of those guys.
Well, they're great for a single thing,
Those-
whenever.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm not gonna defend them, but to look at the stats that they shared on what happened during the Woolsey fire is pretty
That they went to check
eye-opening.
everybody.
Well, we're in a cell phone generation now, and the amount of calls they got for help, I saw the log, and it's like,
Yeah.
wow, okay, so that's a problem, and that they acknowledge it's a problem, they don't have an answer right now, I don't think, or if they do, they're not sharing it, but,
Did they
yeah.
actually go to those places and help them? I haven't seen anybody, but.
Well, they got bombarded with calls,
No,
people
they did
asking,
get bombarded
go
by
check
that.
on my.
The lifeguards and the
Mom.
CERT guys were
Lifeguards
doing
got a
house
lot.
checks, were doing wellness checks, I know.
Yeah, and
But they were
and their first
passing it
mission
on.
is life, so property's second.
Mhm.
I didn't see any fire people checking on anybody.
And the firemen from out of the area.
Not even the
they're-
rooster or the horses.
Well, I think a ton of them were not in Malibu too, and then, see, they're not Malibu centric. Let's not forget that. So the fire, by the time we got here, we knew a lot more about it. But coming over, I know there was a lot of calls up in the mountains and over the hill.
Because they said they were always chasing it, but I still don't know, why didn't they come down Malibu Canyon, or what, I mean, they went over Canaan, which, or Decker,
I think they went down
or whatever.
Malibu Canyon and stayed on Malibu Canyon.
Yeah,
I'm making that up, but that's just
There
how
was,
it.
have you guys talked to that guy who's writing a book?
Robert Kerbeck?
Yeah.
Yes.
He and I got into a long discussion about standing orders for firefighters from out of the area. And there's standing orders, which I hoped would be, you know, if you don't have anything to do and you see someone on fire, put it out. There are standing orders where if, don't do anything unless you're absolutely comfortable with it.
Yeah,
And
no
I
loss
said,
of
well,
acid or.
in that case, they might as well have stayed home in their hot tub because
That's comfortable.
that's very comfortable. And I can't believe that,
Unless you have a rash or something.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's
hadn't
getting late,
thought
I'm
of
getting
that.
punchy.
I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, that was a problem.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts, people, before I get punchier and? start
Parting
making
words for
reporting
us to,
order?
add to our report?
Listen, my card's here, I know Karen's available.
I've got mine.
It's got my cell phone number on it, if anyone needs it, please take it, most of you are very familiar, feel free. I'm really about fluid communication, so if you have ideas, thoughts, issues you've thought of, just don't be shy.
So you did the last one of these in February, will you do one of these in a few months?
We gotta,
I don't know if
read-
it's really worth it for people, cause.
You're
I
gonna
think
generate a
at some point we're
report.
gonna generate a report, and then we'll figure out the best way, maybe it's another one of these, we haven't actually talked
You're
about
welcome to
that.
contact us, for sure.
No, but it's a different thing when you have a group kind of concern.
I'm just curious if the few people that we are here, if you, if you came here for a purpose, if you got your answer you were looking for, or you needed to ask something. I mean, I just came to sort of advocate or throw the stuff in, but I don't think I know you.
I'm Jim Prabhu. I actually grew up in Malibu West, and I have family that was that still live here in Malibu. I currently don't live within Malibu. I live down Orange County with my kids, but I am a firefighter. I'm a Los Angeles City firefighter, and I was off duty, and I came down Canaan after the Woolsey fire had blown through. So I was here, and I feel your frustration. I felt the same thing. As a firefighter, for me, the most frustrating thing was coming down to the bottom of Canaan after, the most white knuckle drive I've ever had in my life, with fire on both sides, and seeing homes on fire and no fire engines. It was incredibly frustrating for me. So my family is the Cortazzo family on the Point Doom. We got in our pickup trucks and we started driving around to try to do what we could. We went behind Malibu Park. I had a shovel and I had a bucket, and that was all my firefighting tools that I had. I was throwing dirt on a house. I don't even know whose house it was. There was a shed that was taken off, and we were trying to put it out, or at least protect the house as much as we could. And fortunately, a strike team from San Diego came by, some young firefighters, some 20-year-old kids that were just freelancing. And I asked them, I go, hey, are you guys part of a strike team? Where is everybody? And they go, yeah, we're the strike team for this entire area. And it was just massive. So you guys have a lot of frustration, and I feel your pain. I feel the same frustration, but you guys found out really quickly the fire department can get overwhelmed very quickly. So there aren't enough resources to go around. 80% of the calls we go on nowadays are EMS related. I won't say that a lot of our training is on that, because it's not. A lot of our training is on structural firefighting, wildland firefighting. It's everything that's entailed with it. Why some fire engines didn't engage, I can't answer that for you. As an officer on my engine, if I saw that going down, I wouldn't let it happen. I'm gonna put out a fire. It's my instinct to act. So, for me, it was, yeah, and I can't speak on their behalf. I can't speak on the LA County Fire's behalf, but I know that they were easily overwhelmed. My department had a computer model. They knew that this thing was running all the way to Pacific. And I grew up here in 1978. I've been through many fires. My family's been through many fires. And ultimately, what stops the fire is the ocean. Winds
And that's what
change,
they
and then
plan on.
the wind comes, and then the fires go up the
I mean, we
canyons.
heard all the stories in Broad Beach burn too, like, that they heard on the radio, that it burned to the ocean, you know,
Yeah.
that was the thing. Chris Cortazzo, is that you?
That's my cousin. So, I think the thing that was noticeable for me were how many homes have pools that just didn't
not
have
utilized.
anything, or people had pumps at their houses, they tried firing up, they hadn't been serviced, they didn't work. So, I think there's a lot that can be learned. I think the biggest thing I take out from listening to everybody is you need to create some sort of community resiliency and community disaster preparedness, like Topanga has. It's a great model to go after. You have to take care of yourselves. The fire department will come in, they'll do what they can, but they're gonna get overwhelmed very easily, especially from the incident command position and going down. So it really is about taking care of neighborhoods, you know, building those fire brigades, designating one individual as a leader, having handy-talkies that you can talk from area A to area B. You know, the Malibu West community can talk to the Point Dume community. You have a meeting point where you come in, you gather information, you check on individuals, you make sure people are safe. My cousin and I, he's a retired Santa Clara city captain, and one of the first things we did is we got some of the elderly people on Point Dume that were on Cliffside that didn't evacuate or didn't know that there was a fire, and we gathered them up and we all brought them to my cousin's property just so we knew where they were and everyone's accounted for. So there's a lot that, I mean, our mantra is, you know, you learn from the past and you prepare your home and your community for the future. So
This is what I mean, so many people, everybody that was here just did amazing things. Thank
and it would
you.
go such a long way. And I can't speak on LA County Fire Department, but it would really go a long way if all they said was, "I'm sorry." And that's what I've seen from a lot of the Facebook videos and talking to people is they just want an apology. They just want some empathy from them. But I think ultimately what happens is that opens them up for liability, and they won't do that. So it's unfortunate. I'm sorry. And as a firefighter, I am very, very sorry for your loss. Malibu is my home. It always will be my home. I spend more time here now than I do at my own home in Orange County. So there's a lot that can be learned from this, and I'm really, really hoping it doesn't happen
So you
again.
just came here because you knew it was a meth, I mean, it was a disaster.
So my mother-in-law lives in Simi Valley, and as soon as the Woolsey fire broke out, I had it's an app you can get on your phone. It's a scanner. You use a scanner app. You can listen to anybody, any police, fire, whoever you want. You just pay whatever it is. You plug it in that agency and you listen to it. Well, I started listening to Ventura County Agency, and they were talking about the fire getting right behind my mother-in-law's house. So I packed up my stuff, packed up my van. I had my equipment with me, stopped at my station, grabbed some extra tools and things I needed. Hopefully my chief doesn't see this. And
Take it off of him.
and headed up there. And I knew that it was really bad because there's parts of Ventura County that my city protects. It's called the Bell Canyon area. And you could hear the guys on the radio going, "Hey, I need 5 more strike teams down here." And they're like, "We're working on it. We're all you got." So I knew right away resources were very, very limited. So the fire ended up blowing past my mother-in-law's house. She was fine. I kind of prepped it with the chainsaw before and whatnot. And then my brother calls me and says, "Hey, Aunt Pat and Chris are stuck in the Point. They can't get out." So I got in my van and I drove down Canaan. And probably wasn't the smartest decision on my part, but I'm glad I did it because I was here and I was able to help some people and protect the community that I love. So it was a very, very eye-opening experience. I think not only for the fire department, and they won't probably admit it, but they'll change their tactics and strategy, and I know they will because I talked to my friends and I talked to my department. I've talked to members of LA County Fire Department. And they're definitely learning a lot from what happened.
They don't have the manpower, what difference does it make?
Exactly.
They didn't show up in Bell Canyon.
That's why you need to have a community-based
Resilient.
community resiliency. You need to have neighborhoods.
And I don't get that I get that, but the issue was the ones that were here.
Yeah.
That's the big.
And that I can't answer for you. I don't know.
That's the
You know, I
mystery.
heard about everything you did, thank you. Yes, your story has been passed around, thank you.
I didn't, so thank you for telling me now.
Yeah, that's excellent, thank you for sharing too.
And thanks for coming here tonight, Jim.
Yeah.
It's great. It's great information. You guys are being incredibly proactive, and I can't applaud you enough for what you guys are doing and what the city is doing.
One day at a time.
Yeah.
Guess that's all
Everybody
we
else
have.
got your questions asked or? answer?
Because then this doesn't end here, we're still
In the
ongoing.
brigade department, that is the one thing that Topanga does not have at all. In fact, it's very un-PC to talk about it.
Yeah,
So I have
know.
a few friends and we, gather together, we mutter. So if there's anything we can learn from you, it would help us a lot.
So why don't, at some point, we'll have you come over when we have a meeting. We're still organizing, we've got our equipment list together, our communications list together. We're gonna be doing a training in late June and still meeting with the fire department and all that.
Anything introductory, cause the people I have that are interested, I wanna make sure they know what they're getting into too.
Well, we're setting a bar, like I said, and the bar is you have to agree to
Right,
be
right.
arson watch certified, which takes a little while. I just got
Right.
through it. And then we're gonna require everyone to go through CERT training too. So there's a community give back on top of it.
I'm not sure my guys will do that, to tell
And
you.
then there'll be a core, there's like 5 of us running it, each
Right.
has a different job. Mine's somehow the city connection, I don't know. And then there's 12 key people who are
Yeah.
gonna buy all their gear.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then there'll be a second level that buys their own
So
gear.
what's the time frame on this that I would hear from you?
That's a great, let's just keep in touch, the next month or two.
Okay.
So, I mean, we're actively going, we just got the 50 grand
So I'll
from our
put you in
HOA.
June to see how it's going?
Yeah, anytime,
Cause
anytime.
I know you're busy, you're super busy.
No, I'm just hanging out.
Yeah, yeah.
Forgive me for saying it, but I really think you should make a focused firefighting, training and not have, I've done
Yeah.
CERT, I lost everything I had, all burned up in a fire. Do you have a record of it? I don't know. But, so do I have to do CERT all over again? But my point is, that if people wanna be focused on fire and they don't wanna do CERT, they should have the opportunity to learn firefighting techniques, but that's just.
Well, everyone does,
Yeah,
everyone
yeah,
does.
That's what we kinda need, what if I get trapped at home? I'd
Yeah,
like to know what to do.
everyone has the
Yeah,
opportunity to learn firefighting skills. Our brigade is its own entity that we're trying to evolve the best way to do it because we want those people to be allowed to stay here and have freedom and the training
Yeah.
and the
Well,
waiver
my
signed.
people just won't leave, basically, they'll just never evacuate.
They probably can't get out anyhow, so you might as well.
Yeah, so
Uh,
I mean,
Go in your house,
we need
that's the
a
thing.
slightly softer version.
That's why we're not doing call firefighting, we're doing volunteer, because we want to be masters of our own fate, to be honest.
Yeah, and we're one
Not,
step down.
we don't wanna be under the fire department, but I've been
Right.
very, very clear with the fire department what we're doing at every stage, because that's just the way I like to operate.
Yeah.
Whether they like it or not, I want, there's no surprise, there's
And
nothing
they-
hidden, this is
Right.
what we're doing.
And they haven't really, tried to discourage with.
They
Right.
backed off, they went, at first they were like, maybe, and then they're like, well, okay, let us know, and then they're like, okay, keep going, and now it's heading toward, how can we help? So it's
Yeah.
changing right
It's a
now.
little bit more, it's not the fire department in Topanga, it is the volunteer organization.
Ah.
People on the board are afraid they'll be sued if they give out any kind of information and somebody gets hurt, and that's understandable. So
They
their
probably
hands
need a
are
good
kinda
lawyer.
tied.
Yeah, I mean, I think that comes to a legal entity, I know.
Right.
Keegan's looking at forming an LLC or a C corp, and, yeah, there's legal mechanisms
So
to
the
do it.
people who really need this is East Malibu, all this stuff now too. 'Cause
Absolutely.
We're probably not gonna be hit, who knows, but I don't even know who to contact in Malibu Park. Hans, sort of near, but.
Allen Park's gonna take a while, I mean, obviously that community was just devastated.
No, but but there is no one that I could form anything with that I could.
Robert
Kerbeck
Kerbeck.
is still there.
Robert Kerbeck,
He's the ex-fire chief?
No, he,
he's just a take charge
you
kind of guy.
can look him up, Kerbeck.
Or get a hold of him and get you his
He
email.
wrote an op-ed piece
You
that
know
was
where he
put in the
lives?
LA Times right after the fire. It's called The Accidental Firefighter. He's a writer by profession, he and his 16-year-old
I've seen
son
Robert
stayed.
Kerbeck on the name,
He's
so.
a really good guy, he's a great guy.
He's got a book that's gonna come out pretty soon.
Yeah, he's finishing up the interviews and he's writing it right now, and I know he's texted me a couple times to clarify things. I realize as he asked my story that at some point he's a writer, wants the details, I'm like, I can't remember some of the details.
Oh, yeah.
It's a
It's
giant
insane,
fog.
right? Yeah.
He's like, well, who did you talk to then? I'm like, I don't even
And
remember, it was that
everybody has
same
like
day.
time marked in the videos, and I'm like, I was not taking a video, let me tell you that.
Yeah.
My videos helped me a lot, and
No, I wish I would,
discovering
but
there was
that was the
timestamps was
one I would-
revolutionary, like,
yeah.
oh, so that house burst into flames 10 minutes later, it seemed like an hour, okay.
I just didn't even think of that, I was too busy, but, and I remember asking one person, I said, so what happened in the fire tornado, what did we do? And he goes, I don't know, I left, I wasn't gonna die for this house, you know,
Yeah,
and I
fire
don't
tornado
even
was
remember.
scary.
No, I know.
People saw it from my neighborhood, I didn't, because I was
But it
focused
was
the other
like,
way.
it was up at Calpine, it was in our neighborhood.
Went
and
right down that gully
Are
next to
they
Sea
all
Star.
different ones?
Are you serious?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God.
So a
It's
friend
like
of
it
mine on
ripped
Sea
out
Star said,
trees,
could you check
flipped
my
over
house?
huge
And I went
trucks.
up to
God,
check
I
his
didn't
house, I'm
know.
like, it's fine. He goes, I heard there was damage. Tim Bigelow and I went back and circled the house. That tornado came down there, picked up all his super heavy wood deck furniture, spun it in the air and took out like 27 windows and threw it into his house. We're like, oh
Well, the one guy
my
said, in Melville
God.
Park said his house was saved because of it, because it blew out the window, so the fire went right through.
Yeah, there was no burn in his
But
house.
look
A
at,
lot
you
of
didn't see
furniture
all
in
the
it
trees
that
on
was
Morning View
outside.
and everything completely uprooted, the panel truck flipped over.
Everything's going on. All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.